Some people think marriage means they own everything their children own. My mother-in-law Eleanor learned the hard way that trying to claim my beach house, and my entire private beach, was a very expensive mistake. But to understand how everything exploded that fateful weekend, you need to know how it all began. I'm Olivia Morgan, 33 years old, and this is the story of how my mother-in-law's attempt to steal my beach house revealed not just her latest scheme, but decades of secrets she'd rather keep buried. Growing up in Crystal Cove, I spent every possible moment by the ocean. My father ran a small real estate agency specializing in beach properties, and I'd tag along on his showings, learning the business while falling in love with coastal living. He taught me that beachfront property wasn't just about luxury. It was about preserving something precious for future generations. Anyone can build a house, he'd say, watching the sunset over the water, but a true home grows from the land it's built on. Remember that, Olivia. I took those lessons to heart. After college, I worked for several major development firms, learning the industry inside and out. At 25, I started Morgan Sustainable Properties, focusing on eco-friendly luxury developments. My father's connections and my innovative approach to environmental preservation helped us grow rapidly. That's how I met Michael, my husband. He was presenting research on coral reef preservation at a coastal development conference where I was speaking about sustainable luxury housing. We bonded over our shared love of the ocean and vision for responsible development. Michael was everything I could want in a partner: brilliant, kind, passionate about his work. His family, however, was another story entirely. Eleanor Whitmore, my mother-in-law, came from old money. Though the money had mostly dried up long before she married Michael's father, she maintained the appearance of wealth through careful social manipulation and living off her husband's corporate salary. When he died 10 years ago, she turned her attention to controlling Michael's life and career. Our first meeting was a disaster. She'd arranged a casual lunch at her country club, clearly hoping to intimidate me with her social connections. I arrived in business attire, having come straight from a development site. "Oh dear," she'd said, eyeing my practical shoes. "I suppose in your line of work, fashion isn't a priority." "Actually," I'd replied, "these shoes cost more than your club's monthly dues. They're just designed for function over appearance." That set the tone for our relationship. Eleanor saw me as nouveau riche, lacking the refinement she valued. I saw her as a social climber desperate to maintain her illusion of superiority. Despite her disapproval, Michael and I married in a beachside ceremony. Eleanor tried to push for a grand church wedding, but we held firm. It was the first of many battles over control and appearances. 2 years ago, I discovered the opportunity that would change everything. The Hendrickson property, 3 miles of pristine private beach with 5 historic homes, was coming on the market. The elderly owners were looking for a buyer who would preserve rather than develop the land. I'd known the Hendricksons my whole life. Mrs. Hendrickson used to let me play on their beach when I was little, teaching me about the native plants and wildlife. When I heard they were selling, I immediately set up a meeting. "We've had offers from major developers," Mr. Hendrickson told me. "They want to build a resort, condos, retail space. But this beach, it's special. We raised our children here. We've protected it for 40 years. "I understand," I said. "I want to preserve it too. Keep the existing houses, maintain the natural dunes, protect the wildlife, maybe add some discreet rental properties for people who appreciate the quiet." Mrs. Hendrickson smiled, "Just like your father, seeing the value in preservation." We negotiated a fair price minus $12 million for the entire property. It was a steal considering the development potential, but the Hendricksons cared more about their legacy than profit. I didn't tell Michael immediately. His mother had a habit of interfering in our financial decisions, always pushing for more extravagant purchases to maintain appearances. I wanted this to be handled carefully. When I finally showed him the property, he was amazed. The main house was a stunning modern structure built to blend with the landscape. Floor-to-ceiling windows brought the ocean view inside, while the wrap-around deck offered perfect sunset watching. "It's incredible," he said, "but can we afford something like this?" I showed him the numbers. The purchase was already complete, financed through my company with plans to renovate the other houses as luxury vacation rentals. The income would more than cover the costs while funding marine conservation projects. "You did all this?" he asked, impressed. "Without telling Mom?" "This is our future," I said, "not hers." We moved in a month later. The other houses needed work, but the main house was perfect. I set up my office overlooking the water, while Michael created a small research station to monitor the local marine life. That's when Eleanor's interference began. At first, she was thrilled. Finally, her son had a suitable home for entertaining. She started showing up unannounced with her social circle, treating our house like her private club. I tolerated it initially. The house was large enough that we could avoid her groups, and Michael was happy seeing his mother enjoying herself, but Eleanor kept pushing boundaries. She redecorated rooms without asking, replaced my carefully chosen sustainable furniture with gaudy antiques, and criticized everything from our choice of wine to the local wildlife. "Seabirds are so common," she'd complain. "Can't we do something about them?" The protected species nesting on our beach were apparently beneath her standards. Then she started scheduling events without consulting us. Charity luncheons, garden club meetings, even wedding receptions for her friends' children. She'd simply announce that 50 people would be arriving on Saturday, expecting us to accommodate her plans. "Mom," Michael finally protested, "you need to ask before planning events here." "Don't be silly, darling," she replied. "This is a family home. I'm simply helping you use it properly." That should have been our warning sign. Eleanor didn't see our home as our property. In her mind, anything belonging to her son belonged to her. I installed a comprehensive security system, originally intended to monitor the protected wildlife areas and ensure the safety of our rental properties. Every entrance was covered, every room secured. Eleanor complained about the cameras, but I insisted they were necessary for insurance purposes. The system proved its worth sooner than expected. We started noticing small items missing after Eleanor's visits: jewelry, artwork, small antiques. When confronted, she'd claim ignorance or suggest we were misremembering. Then larger things began disappearing: a valuable painting from the guest house, a set of first edition books from the library, my grandmother's silver service. I checked the security footage but kept my discoveries private. Eleanor was getting sloppy, confident in her ability to talk her way out of any situation. The footage showed her methodically going through our possessions when she thought no one was watching. Sometimes she'd pocket small items directly. Other times, she'd let her art dealer friend examine pieces, which would then vanish days later. But the real shock came when I discovered her gambling. The pool house cameras caught her hosting high-stakes card games, losing thousands she didn't have. She was stealing from us to pay her debts. I shared the evidence with Michael. He was devastated but not entirely surprised. "She did this after Dad died too," he admitted. "Took things from the house, claimed they were family heirlooms she was redistributing. I never proved anything." We were discussing how to handle the situation when everything came to a head. I returned early from a business trip to find Eleanor hosting her largest party yet. Cars lined our private drive, people spilled onto the protected dunes, and music blasted across the beach, disturbing the wildlife we worked so hard to protect. Eleanor was holding court on our deck, drink in hand, playing the grand dame of the estate. "Oh, darling," she trilled when she saw me. "I'm just showing the ladies from the club our family's summer estate. Did you know the Hendersons are interested in buying one of the guest houses? I told them we could work something out." "You're trying to sell property you don't own?" I kept my voice level, but inside I was seething. "Don't be difficult, dear. This is family property now, and as the family matriarch, I have every right to." "Get out," I cut her off. My patience finally snapped. Eleanor drew herself up to her full height. "Excuse me?" I said, "Get out, all of you. This party is over." "How dare you?" Eleanor's face turned red. "This beach house belongs to the whole family," she screamed, causing several of her guests to stop and stare. That's when I noticed the sapphire necklace. I'd seen it in our security footage, Eleanor stealing it from our safe last weekend, but I'd seen it somewhere else too. I pulled out my phone and opened a different folder. Photographs from police reports of recent thefts from other luxury homes in the area. There was the necklace, listed as stolen from Eleanor's own sister during a family visit. "Eleanor," I said quietly, Before you continue screaming about family property, you might want to explain what you were doing in our master bedroom last Saturday when we were away." The color drained from her face. "Or perhaps you'd like to explain to your friends how you've been borrowing items from our house to sell to private collectors. That sapphire necklace you're wearing, for instance, isn't that the one you stole from your sister last month?" I was just stealing from your family to fund your gambling habit? Just selling stolen property to pay your debts?" Several of Eleanor's society friends gasped. The Hendersons, who'd apparently been seriously negotiating to buy property Eleanor had no right to sell, started edging toward the door. "Actually," I continued, my voice carrying across the now silent room, "I own this entire beach. Not just this house, the whole 3-mile stretch, all 5 houses, and every grain of sand you're standing on. And I have security footage of everything that happens here." I held up my phone, showing the clear video of Eleanor entering our bedroom, opening our safe with a copied key, and helping herself to my jewelry. "Would anyone like to see what else I have on camera? The card games in the pool house where Eleanor lost thousands she didn't have. The meetings with that questionable art dealer who's been helping her fence stolen items. Or perhaps her discussion with the Hendersons about selling property she doesn't own." "You wouldn't dare," Eleanor hissed. "Michael would never allow." "I'm right here, Mom." Michael's voice came from behind her. He'd arrived home during her tirade, and I've seen all the footage. Eleanor's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat, clutching the stolen necklace. "Michael, darling, I can explain." "Save it," he cut her off. "The police are already on their way. They're very interested in solving a string of recent thefts from luxury beach homes in the area." The party dissolved in chaos. Eleanor's society friends couldn't get to their cars fast enough, leaving half-full champagne glasses and scandalized whispers in their wake. When the police arrived, Eleanor tried to play it off as a misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. Not just our security footage, but documentation of her gambling debts, correspondence with illegal art dealers, and statements from other victims who recognized their stolen items from our footage. "You've ruined me," she spat as the officers led her away. "My own son and his social climbing wife." "No, Eleanor," I corrected her. "You ruined yourself. We just installed good security cameras." The aftermath was both satisfying and sad. Eleanor was charged with multiple counts of theft and fraud. Most of her society friends abandoned her, especially when they realized some of their missing items had passed through her hands. The investigation revealed decades of similar behavior. Stealing from family and friends, selling heirlooms to cover gambling debts, manipulating others to maintain her facade of wealth. She'd been doing it since before Michael's father died. Michael was devastated but resolute. "She needs help," he said. "Real help this time, not just bailouts and cover-ups." We arranged for Eleanor to get counseling for her gambling addiction as part of her plea deal. She's facing significant jail time, but there's hope that she'll finally address her underlying issues. The beach houses are thriving now. We've upgraded security and become much more selective about guests. The rental properties are popular with families who appreciate the quiet, natural setting. Michael has expanded his marine research station, documenting the positive effects of our conservation efforts. We've seen increased nesting of endangered sea turtles and the return of several bird species to the protected dunes. Last week, Eleanor's sister came to visit, the one whose necklace she'd stolen. We spent a long afternoon talking about family, forgiveness, and the weight of secrets. "She was always like this," her sister admitted. "Always taking, always wanting more, but we enabled it, covered it up, let her get away with it because confronting her seemed harder than letting her continue." I walk the beach every evening, watching the sunset just like I did with my father years ago. Sometimes I think about Eleanor, sitting in her cell, probably still convinced she was entitled to take whatever she wanted. The security cameras are still running, still protecting our piece of paradise, but now they're capturing happier moments, genuine family gatherings, children playing in the surf, researchers documenting the return of endangered species. That's the thing about karma. Sometimes it needs a little help from modern technology. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about creating something so beautiful that those who tried to steal it have to watch from the outside, knowing what they lost through their own greed. The Hendersons sent an apology note last month. along with a generous donation to our Marine Conservation Fund. Turns out conscience occasionally wins over social climbing. Michael visits his mother in prison occasionally. She's different now, quieter, less demanding. Maybe losing everything finally taught her that you can't take what isn't yours, no matter how entitled you feel. Our beach house is truly a family home now, just not the way Eleanor envisioned. It's filled with people who respect its beauty, protect its environment, and understand that true wealth isn't about possession or control. Sometimes the best way to deal with toxic family members is to let them reveal themselves. Eleanor thought she was entitled to everything we had. Instead, she lost everything she had trying to take what was never hers. I've kept all the security footage, not as leverage but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch out for, and that karma has a way of catching up, especially when you help it along with good security cameras.
The call came just as I was scrubbing dried egg yolk off my favorite breakfast plate. My father's name lit up my phone screen for the first time in 15 years, and I nearly dropped the dish into the sink. For a moment, I just stood there, water running over my hands, wondering if this was some kind of cosmic joke. My name is Morgan, and until that moment, I thought I had my life figured out. Sure, my marriage to Sam wasn't perfect, but whose is? And yes, maybe our son Jake hadn't spoken to us in months, but that's what kids do in college, right? They drift away, find themselves. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. I let the phone ring 4 times before answering. Hello. Morgan. My father's voice was thinner than I remembered, but it still carried that stern edge that used to make me sit up straighter at the dinner table. I need to see you. Walter. I switched off the faucet, wiping my hands on my jeans. Is everything okay? A dry chuckle crackled through the line. No, not really. I'm dying, Morgan. Cancer. Doctors say I've got about 6 months. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. I pulled out a chair and sank into it, my legs weak. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything then. Just come see me. There are things we need to discuss. Things about your mother, about what happened back then. My stomach clenched. That was 15 years ago. We both agreed. No, he cut me off. You agreed. You and that husband of yours. I just watched you walk away. From somewhere upstairs, I heard Sam moving around, probably getting ready for work. His footsteps always seemed heavier lately, like he was carrying some invisible weight. Look, my father continued, his voice softening slightly. I know this isn't fair, but I found something in your mother's old things. A letter. It's about that summer, Morgan. The one before everything fell apart. I closed my eyes, memories threatening to surface. Dad, I can't just. Please. The word hung there, foreign and desperate from a man who'd never begged for anything in his life. I'm at the same house. You remember the address? Of course I do. How could I forget? The white colonial with the crooked mailbox, where my mother had planted roses that never quite took. Where everything had changed. Come today if you can. Alone. He paused, and I could hear him struggling to catch his breath. And Morgan? Don't tell Sam. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there, staring at my phone, until Sam's footsteps reached the kitchen doorway. Everything okay, honey? His voice was casual, but there was something else there. Something watchful in the way he leaned against the doorframe in his perfectly pressed suit. Wrong number, I said, the lie slipping out easier than it should have. Just some telemarketer. Sam nodded, adjusting his tie. Listen, I've got a late meeting tonight. Don't wait up. Another late meeting. They've been happening more frequently lately. Along with the mysterious phone calls he took in our garage and the receipts I found for restaurants I'd never been to. Sure. I smiled, the expression feeling plastic on my face. I might go visit an old friend anyway. He barely looked at me as he grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. I waited until I heard his car pull out of the driveway before I let myself really think about what I was about to do.
My father was dying.
He had a letter from my mother, and whatever was in it had been important enough to break 15 years of silence. I glanced at the clock, 9:15 a.m. Sam wouldn't be home until late. He'd made that clear. Plenty of time to drive to my childhood home and finally face whatever truth my father needed to share. What I didn't know then was that this wasn't just about my father's secrets. It was about Sam's too. And by the end of that day, everything I thought I knew about my life would be turned upside down. The drive to my father's house felt like traveling back in time. Every landmark brought back memories I'd spent years trying to forget. As I pulled into the cracked driveway, I noticed the roses were gone, replaced by overgrown weeds that seemed to be slowly consuming the house itself. My father opened the door before I could knock. The sight of him knocked the wind out of me. The commanding presence I remembered had shrunk into someone I barely recognized, gaunt, pale, with clothes that hung loose on his frame. "You look just like your mother," he said, his voice rougher than it had been on the phone. I followed him inside, where time seemed to have stopped 15 years ago. The same faded wallpaper, the same worn furniture, even the same smell of coffee and old books. But there was something else now, the sterile scent of medication and illness. "You should have told me sooner," I said, watching him lower himself carefully into his old armchair. He waved off my concern. "Would you have come?" The question hung between us like smoke. We both knew the answer. "I found this last week," he said, reaching for an envelope on the side table. "Your mother left it in her recipe box. It's dated just before everything happened." My hands trembled as I took it. The envelope was yellowed, my mother's elegant handwriting faded but still clear. "For Morgan, when the truth comes out." "Have you read it?" He shook his head. "Wasn't meant for me. But Morgan, there's something else you need to know. Something about that summer, about why I couldn't help you when Sam—" A sudden coughing fit seized him, violent enough to double him over. I rushed to get him water, finding my way around the kitchen as if I'd never left. When I returned, there was blood on his handkerchief. "How bad is it?" I asked, handing him the glass. "Stage 4. Started in the lungs, spread to the liver." He took a careful sip. "The treatments might buy me a few more months, but they cost more than I have. I had to remortgage the house just to start them." I sat down heavily on the couch. "Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because I still owe people money from last time. From when you came to me about Sam's gambling debts." The memory hit me like a slap. Sam, wild-eyed and desperate, confessing he'd lost everything. Me, begging my father for help. The look of disappointment on his face as he wrote the check that would save my marriage but destroy our relationship. "That debt was paid," I said quietly.
No.
He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "What I gave Sam that day wasn't mine to give. I borrowed it, Morgan. From people who don't forget. And now they're calling it in." My phone buzzed, a text from Sam. "Where are you? We need to talk about the account." I ignored it, my mind racing. "How much?" "With interest?" "Close to $500,000. The room seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. Sam told me he paid you back within a year." My father's laugh was bitter. "Is that what he told you? Read your mother's letter, Morgan. She knew things about Sam, things she tried to warn me about before she died. I didn't listen then, but maybe you will now." Another text from Sam. "Seriously, where are you?" "The bank called." I stared at the envelope in my hands, remembering Sam's late meeting tonight, all the unexplained absences. The way money seemed to disappear from our accounts lately. "There's something else," my father said, his voice growing weaker. "The people I borrowed from? They've been watching Sam. They say he's in trouble again, deeper than before. And this time, he's dragged someone else into it." My blood ran cold. "Who?"
Jake.
"Your son came to see me last month. He was asking questions about Sam's business partners. Said he'd found something in Sam's office that scared him." The third text from Sam came just as my father finished speaking. "The police were just here. Don't go home." I looked up from my phone to meet my father's knowing gaze. Whatever was in my mother's letter, whatever Sam had done, one thing was clear: the life I'd built on 15 years of silence was about to come crashing down. And somewhere in the middle of it all was my son, walking into the same trap that had snared me all those years ago. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I sat in my car outside Jake's apartment near campus, my mother's unopened letter burning a hole in my purse, watching shadows move behind his window. My phone had exploded with messages from Sam, each one more desperate than the last. But it was the single text from Jake that kept me frozen in place. Don't trust Dad. Don't tell him you're coming to see me. When Jake finally emerged from his building, he looked older somehow, his shoulders tight with tension. He spotted my car immediately, as if he'd been expecting me. We can't talk here, he said, sliding into the passenger seat. There's a diner about 20 minutes away. Follow my directions. The Jake I knew would have hugged me, would have had 1,000 questions about why I was there. This Jake stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Your grandfather told me you visited him, I said, pulling away from the curb. Yeah, well, someone had to look into what Dad's been doing. He glanced at his phone, then turned it off completely. Did you know he's been using my social security number? My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What? Turn left here. Jake's voice was flat. He opened accounts in my name. Credit cards, loans. I found the paperwork in his office when I was home last month. That's why I went to see Grandpa Walter. I thought maybe he knew something about Dad's business partners. The diner appeared ahead, a neon oasis in the growing dark. Inside, Jake chose a booth far from the windows. He looked exhausted up close, with dark circles under his eyes that reminded me too much of his father. How bad is it? Asked after the waitress brought us coffee. Jake pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. See for yourself. The documents inside told a story that made my stomach turn. Credit applications, bank statements, loan documents, all in Jake's name, all signed with perfect forgeries of his signature. The amounts were staggering. There's more, Jake said, his voice finally cracking. I followed Dad last week. He met with these guys. They didn't look like regular businessmen. One of them mentioned something about collection methods if the payments didn't come through. A memory surfaced. Sam's split lip and bruised ribs 15 years ago, his shaking hands as he begged me to ask my father for money. History wasn't just repeating itself, it was escalating. Why didn't you come to me? I asked. Jake's laugh was bitter. Like you came to me about Grandpa being sick? Or about whatever happened 15 years ago that tore the family apart. We don't talk about real things in our family, Mom. We just pretend everything's fine until it explodes. Before I could respond, Jake's phone, which he'd turned back on, buzzed with a text. The color drained from his face as he read it. Dad knows I have the documents, he said. He's at my apartment right now. My coffee turned to acid in my stomach.
How?
My roommate must have told him. Jake ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so like his father's it hurt to watch. Mom, there's something else. I found another set of papers in Dad's office. Letters from someone named Claire. They're not just business letters. The name hit me like a physical blow.
Claire.
The woman Sam had almost left me for before everything fell apart 15 years ago. The reason we'd needed my father's money in the first place. My phone lit up with a new message from Sam. I know Jake showed you the papers. We can fix this. Like we fixed it last time. Just come home and we'll talk. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw the weight of secrets crushing him just like they'd crushed me at his age. I thought about my mother's letter, still unread, about my dying father and his unpaid debts, about all the lies I'd told myself to keep my marriage intact. No, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. We're not fixing it this time. We're ending it. Jake's eyes widened. What are you going to do? I pulled out my mother's letter, finally ready to read it. First, we're going to learn the truth. All of it. Then we're going to make your father face what he's done. To all of us. What I didn't tell Jake was that I'd seen a business card fall from his folder. Detective Laura Bennett, Financial Crimes Division. My son had already started down a path that would either save us or destroy us all. My mother's handwriting blurred as I read her letter for the third time, sitting in my father's kitchen while Jake paced and Walter dozed in his chair. The truth she'd tried to warn us about 15 years ago was worse than I'd imagined. Sam hadn't just been gambling back then. He'd been laundering money for the same people who were now threatening our son. We need to go to the police, Jake said, stopping by the window. Detective Bennett already has a file on Dad's activities. I folded the letter carefully. It's not that simple. If we report him, these people will come after all of us, including your grandfather. They're already coming after us. Jake's voice cracked. Look what they made Dad do to me. Using my identity, forging my signature. He's destroyed my credit, my future. A knock at the door made us all freeze. Walter stirred in his chair, suddenly alert despite his medication. Jake moved away from the window, and I saw fear flash across his face. It's Sam, he whispered. His car's outside. Before I could stop him, Walter was pushing himself up, moving toward the door with surprising speed. When he opened it, Sam stood there in his perfectly tailored suit, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Morgan. His voice was soft, reasonable, the voice he used when closing deals. We need to talk.
No.
The word came out stronger than I expected. Whatever you're going to say, the answer is no. He stepped inside anyway, his eyes taking in Jake's presence, the letter in my hands, Walter's defensive stance. You don't understand. I had to do it. They were going to take everything. Like you took everything from me? Jake moved forward, but I caught his arm. Did you think I wouldn't find out about the loans? About Claire? Sam's face went white at the name. You've been in my office. Someone had to look for the truth. Jake shot back. Mom wouldn't. Grandpa couldn't. So I did. The truth? Sam laughed, but there was an edge of hysteria to it. You want the truth? Fine. I made mistakes. But everything I did to protect this family. To give you the life you deserved. By stealing my identity? Jake pulled away from me. By threatening Grandpa? I never threatened. No. Walter cut in, his voice steady despite his weakness. You just sent your business associates to do it for you. Like you did 15 years ago. Sam turned to me, his eyes pleading. Morgan, please. We can fix this. I have a plan. One last deal that will set everything right. Like the last deal? I opened my mother's letter. The one that got Kevin Martinez killed? The name hung in the air like smoke. Sam's face went from white to gray. How did you? He started. Mom knew, I said quietly. She wrote it all down before she died. How you convinced Kevin to help you move money through his restaurant. How he threatened to go to the police when he found out where the money came from. How he disappeared 3 days later. That wasn't me, Sam whispered, but his hands were shaking. I didn't know they would. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, I saw 2 men in dark suits approaching the house. Sam's business associates, right on schedule. Jake, I said, keeping my voice steady, take your grandfather to the back room.
Now.
Morgan. Sam reached for me, but I stepped back. You have 2 choices, I said, pulling out Detective Bennett's card. Either you tell these men you're done, that you're going to the police and taking whatever deal they offer, or I make the call right now. They'll kill me, he said. Maybe. I met his eyes. But if you don't choose, they'll kill all of us, including your son. The knock came, heavy and insistent. Sam looked at the door, then at me, then at the hallway where Jake had disappeared with Walter. 25 years of marriage, and I finally saw him clearly, a man trapped by his own lies, desperate to maintain control even as everything crumbled. Time's up, I said, holding up my phone. What's it going to be? The knocking grew louder, and Sam made his choice. But it wasn't the one any of us expected. Sam opened the door before I could stop him. The 2 men pushed past him into Walter's house like they owned it, their expensive suits a stark contrast to the worn furniture and faded walls. I recognized one of them from photos in my mother's letter. Marcus Chin, the man who'd visited Kevin Martinez the night he disappeared. Family reunion? Marcus smiled, but his eyes were cold. How touching. The other man closed the door, positioning himself in front of it. Sam stood between them and me, his hands raised in a placating gesture. I can explain everything. No need, Marcus said. We already know about the detective, about the evidence your son collected, about the letter. He looked at me. Your mother was quite thorough, wasn't she, Mrs. Flynn? A crash from the back room made everyone turn. Jake appeared in the hallway, supporting Walter, who looked even paler than before. Get out of my house, Walter wheezed, but the effort sent him into another coughing fit. Dad, please, I started, but Marcus cut me off. Actually, this works out perfectly. Everyone who needs to hear this is right here. He pulled out his phone, showing us a video. My stomach dropped as I recognized Detective Bennett entering a building. Your detective friend? She had an unfortunate accident an hour ago. Nothing fatal, we're not monsters. But she'll be indisposed for a while. Jake took a step forward, but I grabbed his arm. Don't. Smart woman, Marcus nodded. Now, here's what's going to happen. Sam's going to finish what he started. One more transaction, clean and simple. Jake's identity is already in place for the accounts.
No.
The word came out before I could stop it. Marcus's smile widened. No? Maybe I should show you another video. This one's from 15 years ago. Kevin Martinez's last night at his restaurant. Sam, you remember that night, don't you? Sam's face went ashen. You said you deleted that. Insurance, Marcus shrugged. Like the new evidence we have about Walter's involvement in covering up certain financial irregularities. Prison's not kind to sick old men. I felt the weight of Detective Bennett's card in my pocket, now useless. My mother's letter seemed to burn where I'd tucked it into my waistband. She'd known this might happen, had tried to warn us about the web Sam was weaving. How much? I asked. Mom, no. Jake started. 5 million, Marcus said. Through the account Sam set up in Jake's name. Clean, untraceable. Or we start sending videos to the police. First Kevin's, then some interesting footage of Walter from back in the day. Maybe even that security tape from Sam's office showing Jake stealing documents. The second man moved away from the door, pulling out papers. Everything's ready. Just needs the right signatures. I looked at my family, Jake, his youth already marked by our mistakes. Walter, dying but still trying to protect us. Sam, trapped in a prison of his own making. 25 years of choices, lies, and compromises had led us here. Then I remembered something else from my mother's letter. A safety deposit box key, taped to the last page. What if I could offer you something better than money? Marcus raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Mom, what are you doing? Jake whispered. I pulled out my phone, bringing up a photo I'd taken of one particular page from my mother's letter. Kevin Martinez kept records. Everything about your operation, going back 30 years.
My mother found them before she died.
They're in a safety deposit box. Marcus's smile faltered for the first time. You're bluffing. Am I? Why do you think she wrote that letter? Why do you think Sam's been so desperate to find it? I looked at my husband, seeing the recognition dawn in his eyes. That's what you were really looking for all these years, wasn't it? Sam nodded slowly, finally understanding. The records. They destroy everything. Here's my offer, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Leave my family alone. All of us, including Sam. In return, those records stay buried. Marcus studied me for a long moment, and if we refuse? I held up my phone. Then every news outlet in the country gets these photos in the next 5 minutes. I may go down, but I'll take you with me. The silence that followed was deafening. In it, I heard my mother's voice from the letter. Sometimes the only way to protect what matters is to risk everything. Marcus made his choice. But this time, we were ready for it. Marcus's choice came in the form of a single nod to his partner. Before any of us could react, the second man grabbed Jake, pressing something against his back. The implied threat was clear. The safety deposit box, Marcus said calmly.
Now.
My bluff had failed. Worse, I'd put Jake in danger. Sam stepped forward, but Marcus raised a hand. Stay where you are, or your son learns exactly how his namesake Uncle Jimmy died. The color drained from Sam's face. You said. I say lots of things, Sam. Like how I said your family would be protected if you played along. Marcus turned to me. The key, Mrs. Flynn. Don't make me ask again. Walter struggled to stand straighter. Morgan, don't. Shut up, old man, Marcus snapped. Your daughter's going to make the right choice. Just like she did 15 years ago when she chose to keep quiet about Kevin Martinez. The truth hit me like a physical blow. You knew? All this time. You knew I saw what happened. Of course we knew. Why do you think Sam married you so quickly afterward? We needed insurance that you'd keep quiet. Marcus smiled. Sam played his part perfectly. Didn't you, Sam? I looked at my husband. Really looked at him. 25 years of marriage, and I finally saw the truth in his eyes. It wasn't real. Any of it. Morgan, please, Sam's voice cracked. It started that way, but… The key, Marcus interrupted. Or should we discuss this family's history in front of Jake? Jake struggled against his captor. Mom, don't give them anything. Whatever it is, it's not worth. The man holding him tightened his grip, and Jake's words cut off in a gasp of pain. My mother's letter had warned me about this moment. When they come, she'd written, they'll try to take everything. Don't let them take your soul, too. I pulled out the safety deposit box key, watching Marcus's eyes light up with triumph. But as I held it out, Walter suddenly lurched forward, knocking into the man holding Jake. In the chaos that followed, several things happened at once. Jake broke free, stumbling toward me. Walter collapsed, his breathing ragged. And through the window, I caught a flash of red and blue lights. Marcus saw them too. His face twisted with rage as he grabbed the key from my hand. You called them. No, I said, helping Walter into a chair. But I knew someone would. Sam stepped between Marcus and me. It's over. The police are here. You're right, Marcus said softly. Then he pulled out a gun. It is over. The front door burst open, and Detective Bennett appeared, arm in a sling but eyes fierce. Drop it, Marcus. More officers poured in behind her. Marcus looked at the key in his hand, then at me. You know what's funny? The box is empty. Has been for years. Your mother moved everything to a digital file before she died. He smiled one last time. Check your email, Mrs. Flynn. I'm sure it's fascinating reading. As the police took Marcus and his partner into custody, I opened my phone with trembling hands. There it was, an email from my mother, dated to be delivered today. 15 years of secrets, waiting to destroy what was left of my family. Mom? Jake's voice was small, uncertain. What does he mean about Dad marrying you? About Uncle Jimmy? I looked at Sam, who stood defeated by the window. At Walter, who couldn't meet my eyes. At Detective Bennett, who watched me with something like pity. The truth, I said finally, is that our whole life has been built on lies. And now we have to decide what to do with them. My phone felt heavy in my hand, my mother's email unopened. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it just shows you the bars of your cage more clearly. But as I stood there in my father's house, surrounded by the wreckage of 25 years of deception, I realized something. The only way forward was through the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I opened the email and began to read. Detective Bennett sat across from me in the station's interview room, my mother's email printed out between us. Outside, I could hear Sam being processed, his voice carrying that same smooth confidence he'd used to lie to me for 25 years. Your mother was thorough, Bennett said, tapping the papers. Bank records, photographs, recordings, everything we need to put Marcus away for life. And Sam. What about Jimmy? I asked. Sam's brother? Bennett's expression softened. The file confirms what Marcus implied. Jimmy Flynn didn't die in a car accident. He was killed after threatening to expose their operation. Sam knew. He's always known. A knock at the door interrupted us. Jake stood there, looking older than his 21 years. They're ready for Mom's statement. Wait, I said as Bennett started to rise. There's something else you need to see. I pulled out my phone, showing them the text I'd received an hour ago from an unknown number. Meet me at Kevin's old restaurant. Come alone, or Sam takes the fall for everything. See. Claire, Jake said. Dad's old girlfriend? Bennett frowned. We haven't been able to locate her. She disappeared right after Kevin Martinez's murder. Because she never left, I said. She's been working with Marcus this whole time. The affair with Sam, the threats, everything, it was all part of their plan. Mom, no. Jake grabbed my arm. You can't meet her. She's the only one who knows where the original evidence is, I said. Without it, Marcus's lawyers will tear this case apart. Sam will walk free, and everything we've been through will mean nothing. Bennett studied me. You're not going alone. Yes, I am. I stood up. Claire won't show if she suspects anything. And I need answers about Sam, about why my mother trusted her with those records. At least we're a wire, Bennett insisted. I shook my head. No recordings. No backup. Just me and the truth. The restaurant was dark when I arrived, its windows boarded up since Kevin's death. Claire stood in the shadows of the entrance, barely changed from the photos in my mother's file. You figured it out, she said as I approached. Faster than we expected.
We.
She smiled. Your mother and I. We've been planning this for 15 years. The world tilted sideways. What? Why do you think she kept such detailed records? Why did she wait until now to reveal everything? Claire stepped closer. She knew what Sam was, what Marcus had done to Kevin. We worked together, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. You were my mother's informant, I whispered. Someone had to protect you. Your mother knew she was dying, knew Sam would never let you go willingly. So we created a trail, knowing someday you'd follow it. The affair with Sam was a way to get close, to gain Marcus's trust.
Claire pulled out a USB drive.
Everything's here, the original files, recordings of Marcus confessing to Jimmy's murder, proof of Sam's involvement from the beginning. Your mother called it her insurance policy. I reached for the drive, but Claire held it back. First, you need to decide, what kind of justice are you looking for? What do you mean? Sam's looking at 20 years minimum. But with this? She held up the drive. He'll never see daylight again. Is that what you want? For Jake to lose his father forever? I thought about Sam's lies, about Jake's pain, about my mother's years of silent preparation, about revenge versus justice, and the thin line between them. I want the truth, I said finally. All of it. Whatever that means for Sam, for all of us. Claire nodded, handing over the drive. Your mother would be proud. She always said you were stronger than you knew. As I took the drive, police lights suddenly flooded the restaurant. Bennett's voice rang out. Claire Anderson, you're under arrest. I looked at Claire in shock, but she was smiling. Did you really think I'd let you come alone? Some truths need witnesses, Morgan. That's what your mother taught me. As Bennett's team moved in, I clutched the drive containing 15 years of carefully gathered truth. Sam's fate, Jake's future, my mother's final justice. All of it resting in my hands. Now I just had to decide what to do with it. 6 months after Sam's arrest, I sat beside Walter's hospital bed, holding his hand as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Jake dozed in a chair nearby, research papers spread across his lap. He'd transferred to a local college to be closer to us, though he insisted it was just for better internship opportunities. The USB drive from Claire had changed everything, but not in the way I'd expected. Instead of using all the evidence, I'd made a different choice. I gave prosecutors enough to convict Marcus and his organization, but held back the worst of Sam's involvement. 10 years instead of life. A chance for redemption instead of destruction. You're thinking too loud, Walter mumbled, his eyes fluttering open. Just wondering if I made the right choice, I said softly. About Sam? He squeezed my hand weakly. You chose mercy. That's never wrong. Jake stirred, looking up from his papers. Grandpa's right. Dad's letters from prison. He's different now. Actually talking about things, not just manipulating. The latest letter sat in my purse unopened. Sam wrote every week, each envelope containing a piece of truth he'd never shared before. Small confessions, genuine regrets, memories of moments when our love had been real despite its fraudulent beginnings. Claire's testimony at the sentencing, Jake continued, about how Mom planned everything. I keep thinking about that. How she protected us even after she was gone. She protected you, Walter corrected. Morgan was just the weapon she chose. A knock at the door interrupted us. Detective Bennett stood there, holding a familiar-looking envelope. This came to the station today. From Claire's personal effects. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before. My mother and Claire, sitting in Kevin's restaurant, both smiling. On the back, my mother's handwriting. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go of revenge. There's something else, Bennett said, pulling out a document. Claire's confession. She admitted to killing Kevin Martinez herself to protect your mother. He wasn't just threatening to expose the operation, he was threatening to reveal your mother's role as an informant. The truth settled over me like a heavy blanket. My mother hadn't just been gathering evidence, she'd been protecting her own secrets, her own sins. The perfect justice I'd been seeking had never existed. What are you going to do? Jake asked. I looked at the confession, then at Walter's tired face, at Jake's concerned eyes. Nothing, I said finally. Some truths don't need to be told. Some debts don't need to be collected. Walter nodded, understanding in his gaze. Like mother, like daughter. Speaking of debts, Bennett added, Marcus's assets have been seized. The court awarded restitution to his victims, including the money Walter borrowed 15 years ago. Jake sat up straighter. So the house is yours, Bennett smiled at Walter. Free and clear. Walter's eyes filled with tears. I never thought. I did, I said, squeezing his hand. Mom did too. That's why she kept fighting. Later that evening, as Jake drove us home from the hospital, he asked the question I'd been expecting. Are you going to visit Dad? Soon, I said, watching the familiar streets pass by. When I'm ready to hear the whole truth. When we're both ready to build something real from all these lies. At home, I finally opened Sam's latest letter. Inside was a single sentence. I loved you most when I deserved you least. I thought about my mother's final message, about Claire's sacrifice, about Walter's forgiveness and Jake's resilience, about how revenge and justice sometimes look exactly like mercy. Tomorrow I would visit Sam, not to condemn or forgive, but to understand, to see if anything true could grow in the space between revenge and redemption. But tonight, I sat on my father's porch with my son, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors my mother would have loved. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the fight, but in choosing which battles to let go. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough. I never meant to find that room. If I'd just minded my own business like Father always insisted, maybe things would have turned out differently. But then again, maybe they were always meant to unravel this way. My name is Millie, and until last Tuesday, I thought I knew everything about our family sprawling mansion. Growing up here, I'd explored every corner, from the wine cellar to the attic. Or so I believed. I was looking for Mother's old art supplies in the East Wing when I noticed something odd about the wallpaper near Father's private study. A slight discoloration, barely visible unless you were right up close. I probably wouldn't have even spotted it if I hadn't been procrastinating on my college applications. Running my fingers along the seam, I felt a slight draft. The wall panel gave way under pressure, revealing a keypad hidden behind the wallpaper. I should have walked away. Instead, I punched in Father's birthday, the code he used for everything, despite my brother Henry's constant lectures about security. The panel slid open with a soft hiss. What are you doing up here? Henry's voice made me jump. He stood at the end of the hallway, his usually perfect hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. I gestured vaguely at the open panel. Did you know about this? Henry's face went pale. Millie, close that right now. You can't be here. But I was already stepping inside. The room was small, maybe 12 by 15 feet, with steel filing cabinets lining the walls and a desk covered in documents. What caught my eye, though, was the gun rack mounted on the far wall. These aren't hunting rifles, I whispered, recognizing the sleek shapes of weapons that had no business being in our home. Henry grabbed my arm. We need to go. Now. Wait. I pulled away, moving toward the desk. A folder lay open, revealing what looked like shipping manifests. The company name at the top, Thompson Global Solutions, was familiar, but the contents listed made no sense. Since when does father's company deal in military equipment? Millie, please. Henry's voice cracked. Some things are better left alone. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Henry cursed under his breath and pulled me behind one of the cabinets just as father's voice drifted in. The wedding arrangements are proceeding as planned, father was saying. Once Millie's married to David Reed, Marcus's cooperation will be guaranteed. I felt the blood drain from my face. David Reed was Marcus's son, a man I'd met exactly once at a company gala last month. He was at least 15 years older than me and had spent the entire evening staring at me like I was a prize horse at auction. And if she refuses? It was Marcus's voice, smooth as oil. Father's laugh was cold. She won't. Millie knows her duty to this family. Besides, she's still young enough to be guided. I must have made some small sound because Henry's hand clamped over my mouth. We stayed frozen as father and Marcus continued their conversation, discussing business deals that sounded more and more like something out of a crime thriller. When their voices finally faded, Henry released me. I turned to face him, trembling. How long have you known? Millie. He ran a hand through his hair again. It's complicated. Complicated? I hissed. Father's running some kind of illegal weapons operation and planning to marry me off like it's the 1800s. What's complicated about that? Before Henry could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Mother. Your father wants everyone dressed for dinner in an hour. He has an announcement to make. I looked at Henry, and for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in my brother's eyes. You need to act normal, he whispered. Like you never saw any of this. Promise me. But as we carefully closed the hidden room and headed downstairs, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't pretend anymore. Not when my entire future was about to be traded away like a business asset. I had to find a way out. The dinner announcement felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I sat at our massive dining table, pushing food around my plate while father held court at the head, all smiles and charm. Mother perched beside him, her face a perfect mask of serenity that only slipped when she thought no one was looking. David Reed will be joining us for dinner tomorrow night, father announced, his voice carrying that tone that meant no discussion was welcome. I expect everyone to make him feel welcome. I dropped my fork with a clatter. I'm actually feeling quite ill. Maybe I should skip. Nonsense. Father's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. You're 18 now, Millie. It's time you started taking an interest in the family business. Henry caught my eye from across the table, a silent warning in his expression. I forced myself to nod and mumble something agreeable. After dinner, I followed Mother to her studio. She was already mixing paints, her hands steady despite the slight tremor in her voice. Your father means well, darling. Does he? I closed the door behind me. Like he meant well when he drove away all your artist friends? When he made you stop exhibiting your work? Mother's brush stilled on the canvas. That's different. I chose this life. Did you really choose, or did he just make all your other options disappear? She turned to face me, and for the first time in years, I saw something crack in her carefully maintained composure. There are things you don't understand about your father, about the way this world works. Then help me understand. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I found his secret room today. The weapons, the documents. Stop. Mother's paint-stained fingers gripped my wrist. Some questions are dangerous to ask, Millie. Your father. He doesn't handle disloyalty well. What happened to Uncle James? The question hung in the air like smoke. Uncle James, father's younger brother, had disappeared 3 years ago. The official story was that he'd moved to Australia, but he'd never called, never written. Mother's face went ash-white. Please, Millie, don't. A knock at the door made us both jump. Henry entered, his expression grim. Father wants to see you in his study, Millie. Now. My heart hammered as I climbed the stairs. The hidden room was just feet away from Father's study, its secrets burning in my mind. When I entered, Father was standing at the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Close the door," he said without turning around. I did, my fingers trembling slightly. "You remind me so much of your uncle sometimes," he said, and my blood ran cold. Always questioning, always pushing boundaries. "I don't know what you mean." He turned then, fixing me with those steel gray eyes that could strip away pretense like paint. "Henry tells me you've been asking about James." Mental note: never trust Henry with sensitive information again. "I just wondered why he never calls," I said carefully. "We were close." "Family is everything, Millie." Father set down his glass and approached me. "But family loyalty must be absolute." James forgot that. He started asking questions, making accusations. It became messy. The threat wasn't subtle. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "I understand, Father." "Do you?" He touched my cheek, a gesture that once meant comfort but now felt like ownership. "Tomorrow night, you'll wear the blue dress your mother bought you. You'll smile, laugh at David's jokes, and show him what a perfect Thompson daughter you are. Because that's what family does. We play our parts." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Good girl." He kissed my forehead. "You may go." I managed to walk calmly until I reached my room. Then I collapsed against the door, my whole body shaking. Through the window, I could see Mother's studio light still burning, a lonely beacon in the darkness. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to the only person who might understand. "Henry, we need to talk." About Uncle James. The response came quickly. "Delete this message. Meet me at the old boathouse. Midnight." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Whatever happened to Uncle James, I had a feeling I was about to find out. And something told me it would change everything. The old boathouse creaked in the midnight wind, its weathered boards a stark contrast to our mansion's polished facade. I'd barely made it through the door when Henry grabbed my arm, pulling me into the shadows. "We're not alone," he whispered. Marcus Reed emerged from behind a stack of canoes, his expensive suit looking out of place among the cobwebs and dust. "Miss Thompson, how nice of you to join us." My stomach dropped. "What's he doing here?" "Your brother and I have been having some interesting conversations," Marcus said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "About your father's business practices." "About Uncle James." I turned to Henry, betrayal burning in my throat. "You told him?" "He needed to know," Henry said. "Show her." Marcus pulled out his phone, playing a video that made my blood run cold. It showed Uncle James arguing with Father in his study. The timestamp was from 3 years ago, the night before he moved to Australia. "Your uncle discovered certain irregularities in the company books," Marcus explained. "Weapons being sold to some very unsavory people. He threatened to expose everything." The video ended with Father making a phone call. "Take care of it." "That's not." I couldn't finish the sentence. "Not what?" Henry's voice was bitter. "Not like our father? Wake up, Millie. James isn't in Australia. He's buried somewhere in the woods behind the country club." My legs gave out, and I sank onto an overturned bucket. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because history's about to repeat itself," Marcus said. "Your father's planning something big. Something that would make the weapons dealing look like a parking ticket. And he's using your marriage to David to secure my loyalty." "I won't do it," I said. "I'll run away." "Like Catherine did?" Henry asked quietly. The name hit me like a slap. Catherine, my cousin who'd disappeared 10 years ago. Another family mystery I'd been too young to question. "How many?" I whispered. "How many people has he?" "Too many," Marcus said. "But we can stop him. With your help." I looked between them, these men plotting in shadows. "Why should I trust either of you?" "Because I can get you out," Marcus said. "New identity, new life, far from here. But first, we need evidence. The kind that's in that room you found." My heart raced. "You want me to steal from Father's secret room?" "We want you to save yourself," Henry said. "And maybe Mother too, before it's too late." A noise outside made us all freeze. Footsteps on the dock. "Tomorrow night," Marcus whispered urgently. "During the dinner with David. The study will be empty. It's your only chance." We scattered like shadows, leaving through different exits. I made it back to my room just as Father's security detail passed beneath my window. Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, Uncle James's face haunting me. Had he felt this same terror in his final hours? Had Catherine? My phone buzzed at dawn. A text from an unknown number. Meet me at the coffee shop on Grove Street. 7 a.m. Come alone. J. I almost deleted it, but something made me hesitate. The initial, J, could have been coincidence, but the timing was too perfect. I got dressed quickly, my mind racing. If I was going to survive this, I needed more allies. More information. The weapons in Father's room weren't just for show. They were a promise of what happened to people who crossed him. As I slipped out of the house, I caught sight of Mother in her studio, already painting. But this time, I noticed what she was working on, a landscape of the country club grounds, with dark shapes hidden among the trees. She'd known. All this time, she'd been painting her grief, her guilt, her secrets. I couldn't end up like her, trapped in a gilded cage with blood-stained memories. I couldn't become another family mystery, whispered about but never discussed. The coffee shop was 3 blocks away. Each step felt like a choice between life and death, trust and betrayal, action and paralysis. Whatever waited for me there, whoever Jay was, had to be better than the fate Father had planned for me. Because now I understood, in our family, marriage wasn't an arrangement. It was a sentence. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. A man sat in the corner booth, his face hidden behind a newspaper. As I approached, he lowered it slowly, and my world tilted sideways. Uncle James? He looked different, thinner, grayer, with a scar running along his jawline. But those eyes were unmistakable. Thompson eyes. Sit down, Millie, he said quietly. We don't have much time. My hands shook as I slid into the booth. You're supposed to be dead. I was supposed to be a lot of things. He pushed a manila envelope across the table. Your father's men will be here in 10 minutes. Security noticed you leaving the house. I grabbed the envelope. How are you even alive? I saw the video. Marcus showed you exactly what Richard wanted everyone to see. James glanced at his watch. The real video shows your father ordering my execution. But Marcus had other plans. He helped me disappear, kept me informed. Now I'm returning the favor. The pieces clicked together. Marcus isn't really helping Henry and me, is he? Marcus helps Marcus. He's playing both sides, waiting to see which horse will win the race. James leaned forward. But you're different. You have a chance to get out like I did. Everything you need is in that envelope. New identity, accounts, contacts. Use it tonight, during the dinner party. My throat tightened. What about Mother? Henry made his choice when he aligned with Marcus. Your mother. James's expression softened. Eleanor knows more than she lets on. She's stronger than you think. A black SUV rolled past the window. James tensed. One more thing, he said, sliding a key across the table. Storage Unit 247, Central Storage. What's inside might help you understand why your father is so desperate to keep control of the family. But be careful. Knowledge is dangerous in our world. He stood, adjusting his cap. Good luck, Millie. You're braver than I was at your age. I watched him disappear through the back door just as 2 of Father's security men entered through the front. I slipped the envelope into my bag and pretended to study the menu. Back home, I found Mother in the garden, pruning roses with mechanical precision. Her hands were bleeding, but she didn't seem to notice. The blue roses are dying, she said without looking up. Your father's favorite. I touched her shoulder. Mother, I know where you went this morning. She finally met my eyes. James was always good at hiding. Like Catherine. My heart stopped. Catherine's alive? Mother smiled sadly. The Thompson women survive, Millie. We adapt. She pressed something cold into my palm, a locket. Whatever you decide to do tonight, remember that. I opened my mouth to respond, but Father's voice cut through the garden. There's my girls. He approached with Marcus and David Reed in tow. David's eyes crawled over me like insects. Doesn't Millie look lovely today? Father said, his hand heavy on my shoulder. David was just saying how much he's looking forward to dinner tonight. I forced a smile, feeling the locket burn against my palm. Can't wait. Later, in my room, I opened the envelope. Inside were documents, cash, and a note. The truth about Catherine is in the storage unit. She's waiting for you in Montreal. Jay. My phone buzzed. Henry, whatever you're planning, don't trust Marcus. He showed father the coffee shop footage. Another buzz. Unknown number. Storage unit compromised. Don't go there. Meet me at the old church instead. 8 p.m. Jay. But something felt wrong. The handwriting in the second note was different from James's first one. A trap? I looked out my window at the gathering storm clouds. In 6 hours, dinner would begin. In 6 hours, I'd either be free or follow in Uncle James's footsteps, running, hiding, surviving. Or worse, I'd end up like the others who had crossed father. I opened the locket mother gave me. Inside wasn't a photo, but a tiny key. On its head was engraved, 247. Mother's words echoed in my mind. The Thompson women survive. Time to prove her right. The storage unit key felt like it was burning a hole in my evening clutch as I sat through the most excruciating dinner of my life. David Reed's hand kept finding its way to my knee under the table, while father watched with approving eyes. Mother hadn't come down. A migraine, she'd claimed. But I'd seen the packed overnight bag hidden under her bed. I was thinking a spring wedding, David announced, his fingers digging into my leg. April, perhaps? I shifted away, accidentally catching Henry's eye across the table. His face was a mask, but his knuckles were white around his wine glass. Wonderful idea, father beamed. Millie, darling, why don't you show David the garden? The roses are lovely in the moonlight. It wasn't a suggestion. I stood, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. Of course. The moment we stepped outside, David's charm evaporated. He grabbed my arm, spinning me to face him. Let's be clear about something. I know you're planning something stupid. Marcus told me about your little coffee shop meeting. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Uncle James? He laughed coldly. Did you really think he'd risk everything to save you? He's dead, sweetheart. Has been for years. Marcus played you, and now you're going to play your part like a good little wife, or Daddy Dearest finds out everything. A shadow moved near the roses. Mother stood there, pruning shears in hand, watching us with an expression I'd never seen before. David, she called softly. I believe Richard wanted to discuss business details with you. He released me, straightening his jacket. We'll continue this conversation later, dear. The moment he disappeared inside, Mother pressed something into my hand. Car keys. Storage unit 247, she whispered. Go now. I'll keep them distracted. But, now, Millie. I ran. The storage facility was only 10 minutes away, but every shadow looked like father's security detail. Every car behind me could have been Marcus or David. Unit 247 was at the back of the complex. The key worked, but the door stuck. I heaved it up, and the smell hit me first, musty papers and old leather. Inside was a lifetime of secrets. Filing cabinets lined one wall, each drawer labeled with a year. On a desk sat a laptop and a stack of USB drives. But what caught my eye was the corkboard covered in photos, father with men I'd seen in news reports about organized crime. Weapons shipments. Money transfers. And in the center, a photo of Catherine. She was older than in my memories, the timestamp showing it was taken just last year. She was alive. My phone buzzed. Henry, father knows you're gone. Get out now. I grabbed the laptop and drives, shoving them into my bag. As I reached for Catherine's photo, headlights swept across the storage unit's entrance. Millie? A man's voice, one I didn't recognize. I'm Jake. Your mother sent me. We need to move. I peered around the door. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with kind eyes that didn't match the gun holstered under his jacket. How do I know you're telling the truth? He held up his phone, showing a text from Mother's private number. The Thompson women survive. Another set of headlights appeared at the entrance to the storage facility. Choose now, Jake said quietly. But choose fast. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Trust Jake. He was Catherine's way out. Now he's yours. Love, Mom. The approaching headlights belonged to a black SUV, father's security detail. I looked at Jake, then at the evidence in my bag. Everything I needed to destroy father's empire or save myself. I couldn't do both. Which way to Montreal? I asked. Jake smiled, extending his hand. Let me show you. Behind us, voices shouted. Orders were given. But as we slipped into the shadows, I finally understood what Mother meant. Survival wasn't about running away. It was about choosing when to fight back. 3 days into our escape, Jake's car broke down outside Montreal. We were huddled in a dingy motel room, watching snow fall through a cracked window when my phone lit up with a video call from Henry. My brother's face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. They know everything, Millie. Jake moved closer, his hand steady on my shoulder. Who did this to you? Marcus. Henry's laugh was bitter. Turns out he's been playing both sides longer than we thought. He has Uncle James. The room tilted sideways. James is alive? Barely. Father's keeping him in the basement of the country club. But that's not, Henry glanced over his shoulder. Mother's missing. After she helped you escape, she went to her studio and never came out. There was blood on her roses. The phone slipped from my fingers. Jake caught it, continuing the conversation while I stumbled to the bathroom. The face in the mirror looked like a stranger, dark circles under my eyes, hair tangled from days of running. Your father's men are an hour behind us, Jake said from the doorway. We need to move. I gripped the sink. We have to go back. That's suicide. They have my family. The mirror cracked under my fist, blood welling up between my knuckles. Mother, James, Henry, they're all suffering because I ran. Jake pulled out his gun, checking the magazine. There's something you need to know. I worked for your father before I helped Catherine escape. I was his cleaner. The word hung between us like poison. Did you? I couldn't finish the question. No, but I helped hide the bodies of those who crossed him. That's why I got out, helped Catherine get out. And now they're using that against me. He showed me his phone, photos of Catherine, clearly recent, clearly captive. Marcus sent these an hour ago. Everything clicked into place. You didn't help me because Mother asked. You needed the evidence in that storage unit to save Catherine. His silence was answer enough. I opened my bag, pulling out the laptop and drives. Then let's use it. All of it. Take down Father, Marcus, everyone. They'll kill them all the moment we try. Not if we're smart. I powered up the laptop, fingers flying over the keys. Father always said knowledge is power. Let's see what secrets he's been keeping. The files were encrypted, but I recognized the pattern, the same code Father used for everything. His arrogance would be his downfall. A message popped up on my phone, final warning. Come home now or Mother joins Uncle James. You have 1 hour. David. Attached was a photo of Mother's studio, her easel smashed, blood on the flowers. I can't lose anyone else, I whispered. Jake checked his gun again. Sometimes the only way to save everyone is to risk everything. Or lose everything. He touched my cheek, turning my face toward his. Your father took everything from me once. I won't let him do it again. The laptop chimed, files decrypted. What I saw made my blood run cold. Weapon sales were just the beginning. Human trafficking, political assassinations, evidence of murders stretching back decades. Including proof that Catherine wasn't Father's first victim, just the first to survive. Another message buzzed through. Tick-tock. Daddy's getting impatient. David. I looked at Jake, at the evidence that could destroy my father's empire, at the proof that could save lives, but might cost me everyone I loved. We can run, Jake offered quietly. Start new lives. Let it all burn behind us. But Mother's words echoed in my head. The Thompson women survive. No, I said, closing the laptop. We're going back. But not to surrender. They'll be expecting that. I pulled Mother's locket from my pocket, studying the key that had started everything. Exactly. They're expecting a scared little girl running home to Daddy. Instead, they're going to get what Father always feared most. What's that? I smiled, and for the first time, I saw my father steal in my own reflection. A Thompson who's not afraid of him anymore. The snow kept falling outside our window, covering our tracks, burying the past. By morning, it would be time to face the future, whatever the cost. The country club's basement smelled like copper and fear. Jake and I moved silently through the darkness, guided by the blueprints Henry had sent. Somewhere above us, Father was hosting his annual charity gala, the perfect cover for what was about to happen. We found Uncle James first, handcuffed to a pipe. His face was bloody, but his eyes lit up when he saw us. Should have known Eleanor's daughter wouldn't run forever. "Mother," I whispered, working on his restraints. "Storage room down the hall. Marcus has been keeping her separate from me." Smart man. She nearly took his eye out with her paintbrush. Jake handed James a gun. "Catherine? Top floor. Richard's office. He's keeping her close tonight." Footsteps echoed above us. The gala was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking to the sound of blood money changing hands. "You remember the plan?" I asked James. He nodded, checking the gun. "Create a distraction in the main hall. Get the police here. Keep them busy while you handle Richard. And Marcus?" James's smile was cold. "Leave Marcus to me. He and I have unfinished business." We split up. Jake and I found Mother exactly where James said. She was already free, picking the lock with a broken easel wire. When she saw us, she pressed a finger to her lips and pointed upward. Marcus's voice drifted down from the stairwell. "Richard wants them alive," he was saying. "Especially the girl. He has plans for her." Mother's eyes met mine. In them, I saw 18 years of carefully contained rage. She mouthed one word: "Go." Jake squeezed my hand before melting into the shadows, heading for the security room. Everything was in place. Now came the hard part. I climbed the stairs alone, Father's encrypted files burning a hole in my pocket. The hallway to his office stretched before me like a gauntlet. Inside, I could hear him talking. "Your cousin never did learn," he was saying. "But you will, won't you, Catherine?" I pushed open the door. Father sat behind his desk, looking exactly as he had at dinner 4 days ago. Catherine stood by the window, older but unmistakable, a bruise darkening her cheek. "Hello, Father." He didn't seem surprised to see me. "I knew you'd come home eventually. Thompson blood always tells." That's what Mother says. I moved closer, noting the gun on his desk. "Though I don't think she meant it quite the same way you do. Where's the evidence, Millie?" "Safe. Unless anything happens to my family, any of them." His laugh was genuine. "You think you can blackmail me? I taught you everything you know." "Not everything." I pulled out my phone, showing him the live feed Jake had set up. "Right now, every screen in the main hall is showing your secret files. The weapons deals. The murders. Everything." For the first time, Father's composure cracked. Below us, chaos erupted as his carefully curated world began to crumble. "You're bluffing. Mother taught me to paint, Father. But you taught me how to destroy things." He reached for the gun, but Catherine was faster. She grabbed his wrist, slamming it against the desk. I dove for the weapon as it skittered across the floor. When I stood, Father was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "You're just like him," he whispered. "Like James. Weak. Sentimental." "No," I said, keeping the gun steady. "I'm just like you. I learned to take what I want." Police sirens wailed in the distance. Through the window, I could see guests fleeing, Marcus being tackled by James, Mother emerging from the basement like an avenging angel. "What do you want?" Father asked quietly. "I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything. To watch your world burn and know you can't stop it." I stepped back toward the door. "I want you to live with it like we all had to." His face contorted with rage as he lunged forward, but Catherine's punch dropped him cold. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Ready to get out of here, cousin?" I nodded, hearing Jake's footsteps in the hall, knowing Mother and James were safe below. "The Thompson women survive," I said, watching Father's empire collapse around him. And for the first time in my life, those words felt like a promise instead of a curse. 6 months after Father's arrest, I stood in Mother's new studio in Montreal, watching her paint the sunrise. Her hands were steady now, no longer trembling under the weight of secrets. The canvas bloomed with colors she'd never dared use in the mansion: fierce reds, defiant purples, free-flowing blues. "Henry called," she said, adding a streak of gold to the horizon. "The trial date is set." I nodded, fingering the locket that had started everything. "Will you testify?" "We all will." She set down her brush, studying her work. Even Catherine. Catherine had disappeared again after that night, but differently this time, on her own terms, with a promise to return. She sent postcards from places Father had forbidden us to visit, each one signed with a simple, "The Thompson women survive." Uncle James appeared in the doorway, his scars fading but still visible. "Jake's here with the files from the safe deposit box." My heart jumped at Jake's name, even now. He entered carrying a familiar stack of documents, but his eyes were only for me. We'd grown closer over these months, building something careful and real from the ashes of our shared trauma. "You need to see this," he said, laying out the papers. "Your mother's been busy for years." The documents told a story I'd never suspected. Mother hadn't just been painting all those years, she'd been documenting. Every transaction, every crime, every victim. Her artwork contained hidden messages, dates, locations. She'd built a case against Father piece by piece, painting by painting. "I couldn't save James when Richard tried to kill him," Mother said quietly. "But I could make sure his crimes wouldn't stay buried forever." "The paintings in your studio," I realized. "The ones Father never let anyone see." "Evidence," she confirmed. "All of it. I knew someday one of us would be strong enough to use it." James squeezed her shoulder. "You were always the strong one, Eleanor. We just didn't see it." A text lit up my phone. "Henry, David Reed rolled on Father. Marcus too. It's really over." But was it? Father still haunted my dreams sometimes, his voice whispering about Thompson blood and family loyalty. In quiet moments, I caught myself checking over my shoulder, planning escape routes. "You're not him," Jake said softly, reading my thoughts like he always could. "You never were." I opened the locket, looking at the key that had unlocked so much more than just a storage unit. "No, I'm not. I'm my mother's daughter." Mother smiled, turning back to her canvas. The sunrise she'd painted wasn't just breaking, it was shattering the darkness, sending shards of night scattering like a broken mirror. "I got another postcard from Catherine," I said. "She's in Paris. Says we should join her." "Will you go?" James asked. I looked around the studio, at Mother finally creating freely, at Jake's steady presence beside me, at the family we'd pieced together from broken parts. "Not yet," I decided. "First, we have a trial to finish, a story to tell. And after," Jake's hand found mine, "after we live. Not just survive, live." Mother added one final stroke to her painting, a small figure standing in the breaking dawn, face turned toward the light. Looking closer, I realized it wasn't one figure, but many, their shadows intertwined, holding each other up. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number, but I knew who it was. "Found something you should see." Another family secret, but this one's different. "When you're ready." "See." I smiled, tucking the phone away. Some mysteries could wait. Some secrets were better unveiled slowly, in their own time. Outside, snow was falling, Montreal's endless winter finally giving way to spring. Soon, Father would face justice. Soon, our testimony would ensure he never hurt another family again. But for now, I was content to watch Mother paint, to feel Jake's hand in mine, to know that Uncle James was safe and Catherine was free. To understand finally that revenge hadn't healed us, truth had. The Thompson women survived. But more than that, we learned to live. And that was the greatest victory of all. The letter was nestled among the usual stack of bills and advertisements, its elegant script standing out against the mundane. I knew Ethan's handwriting anywhere, and the sight of it made my heart skip a beat. "My name is Callie, and I've been a paralegal for over a decade. I've always prided myself on my ability to read between the lines, but nothing prepared me for the words that unfolded before me. Callie," it began, "I have something important to ask you. Meet me tonight at our spot." Our spot was a quaint little restaurant by the river, where we first met 2 years ago. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety bubbling up. Ethan wasn't usually one for grand gestures, so whatever he had to say must be significant. The day dragged on, each tick of the clock echoing the flutter of anticipation in my chest. As evening descended, I found myself at the restaurant, the soft glow of candlelight casting a warm hue over everything. Ethan was already there, his usual confident demeanor slightly frayed at the edges. He rose to greet me, his smile a bit too wide, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Callie, I'm glad you came," he said, pulling out a chair for me. There was a nervous energy in his movements, a telltale sign that something was up. We ordered our usual dishes, and as the waiter left, Ethan reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "There's something I need to ask you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The anticipation in the air was palpable. He paused, seemingly searching for the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our future. I want us to be together, Callie. Will you marry me?" The question hung between us, suspended in the air like a fragile promise. My heart soared, but before I could fully savor the moment, he added, "I know it's a big step, and there's something else. I want us to live with my mother, Lorraine, at least for a while." His words landed like a stone in my stomach. Lorraine was a formidable woman, deeply attached to Ethan and not shy about expressing her traditional views. I'd always sensed she saw me as an outsider, someone who might whisk her son away from her influence. I tried to keep my voice steady as I replied, "Ethan, I love you, and I want to be with you, but living with Lorraine, are you sure that's what you want?" He squeezed my hand, his gaze earnest. "I know it's not ideal, but it's important to her. She's been lonely since Dad passed, and I think it'd mean a lot to her. Besides, it's just temporary." I nodded, though my mind was racing. Love was supposed to conquer all, right? But could it withstand the weight of Lorraine's expectations and my own need for independence? As we left the restaurant, Ethan's arm around my shoulders, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me. The night was filled with the promise of a new chapter, yet I couldn't help but feel like I was stepping into a story where the ending wasn't mine to write. Back at my apartment, I replayed the evening in my mind. Ethan's proposal was supposed to be a moment of pure joy, but instead, it felt like a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit. I wanted to believe that love would smooth out the edges, but a part of me couldn't ignore the nagging doubt. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought about Lorraine. Her influence over Ethan was undeniable, and I couldn't shake the suspicion that this arrangement was more about her than us. I'd seen the way she looked at me, as if I were a threat to her carefully constructed world. The next morning, I woke with a renewed determination. I'd agreed to Ethan's plan, but I wasn't going to lose myself in the process. I'd find a way to make it work, to carve out a space for myself in a world that seemed increasingly claustrophobic. But as I prepared for the day, a thought lingered in the back of my mind. What if this was just the beginning? What if the real challenges were yet to come? And with that question echoing in my thoughts, I knew this was just the start of a journey that would test everything I believed about love, family, and justice. Moving into Lorraine's house was like stepping into a time capsule. Everything was pristine, but in a way that felt more like a museum than a home. The floral wallpaper, the antique furniture, even the ticking grandfather clock in the hallway, it all screamed of a time long past. I tried to make it feel like home, adding a few of my own touches here and there, but Lorraine's presence was everywhere. The first few days were filled with polite exchanges and forced smiles. I could sense Lorraine watching me, her eyes like a hawk's, always assessing, always judging. Ethan, oblivious or perhaps unwilling to see the tension, continued to assure me that things would settle down. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, Lorraine appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Callie, dear, I noticed you've been rearranging the kitchen. I'd appreciate it if you left things as they are. I have a system, you see." I nodded, swallowing the urge to argue. "Of course, Lorraine. I was just trying to make things more convenient." Her lips pressed into a thin line. Convenient for whom, I wonder? The question hung in the air, laden with unspoken accusations. I busied myself with the cutlery, pretending not to notice the weight of her gaze. Dinner was a quiet affair, the clinking of silverware the only sound breaking the silence. Ethan was engrossed in his phone, likely checking some financial report. Lorraine, however, seemed intent on maintaining the tension. "You know, Ethan," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet, "I was talking to Mrs. Harper today. She mentioned how important it is for a wife to support her husband's career, especially in these uncertain times." Ethan nodded absently, not catching the pointed look she shot my way. I felt my grip tighten on my fork, but I forced a smile. "I completely agree, Lorraine. It's a partnership after all." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she could see through my placating words. "Yes, a partnership. But some roles are more supportive than others, don't you think?" I bit back a retort, focusing instead on the salad in front of me. Ethan finally looked up, sensing the undercurrent of tension. "Mom, Callie's been a great support. She's always there for me." Lorraine's smile was thin. "I'm sure she is, dear." After dinner, Ethan and I retreated to our room, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. I could feel the frustration building, but I wasn't ready to confront it just yet. Instead, I focused on the small things, unpacking boxes, organizing our closet, trying to carve out a space that felt like ours. But the peace was short-lived. A few days later, I noticed some of my things had gone missing. At first, it was small items, a hairbrush, a book. I brushed it off, thinking I'd misplaced them in the chaos of moving. But then, my favorite necklace disappeared, and I knew something was amiss. It was during one of those quiet afternoons, when Lorraine was out, that I overheard Ethan on the phone with his sister, Tessa. His voice was low, urgent, and I couldn't help but strain to catch the words. "Tessa, you can't keep doing this. Callie's going to notice." There was a pause, and I could almost hear Tessa's voice on the other end, though the words were indistinct. "No, I haven't told her. But you need to stop. It's not fair to her." I stepped back, my mind racing. What wasn't fair? What was Tessa doing? My instincts as a paralegal kicked in, piecing together the fragments of conversation. Something was happening behind my back, and I needed to find out what. The revelation that Ethan might be hiding something from me was a bitter pill to swallow. It wasn't just about the missing items anymore. It was about trust, about the foundation of our relationship. And as much as I wanted to confront him, I knew I needed more information. That night, as Ethan slept beside me, I lay awake, formulating a plan. I would find out what was going on, and I would do it without tipping my hand. The stakes were too high, and I couldn't afford to act on impulse. The next morning, I put on my best game face, determined to play the part of the unsuspecting fiancé. But inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, determination. Whatever was happening, I was going to get to the bottom of it. I had a feeling that this was just the beginning, that the cracks in our foundation were deeper than I'd realized. And as I went about my day, I couldn't shake the sense that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The tension in Lorraine's house was like a taut string, ready to snap at any moment. The days dragged on, each one a careful balancing act between maintaining peace and uncovering the truth. I couldn't afford to let my suspicions fester any longer, so I took a bold step. While Ethan was at work and Lorraine was out for her weekly bridge game, I installed a hidden camera in the living room. It was a risky move, but I needed answers. That evening, as we sat in the living room, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken words. Lorraine was flipping through a magazine, her disapproval of modern fashions evident in her occasional tuts. Ethan was engrossed in a financial report, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Ethan," Lorraine said suddenly, her voice slicing through the silence, "have you spoken to Tessa recently? She mentioned she might stop by." Ethan glanced up, his expression guarded. "Yeah, she said she might swing by this week." "Why?" Lorraine shrugged, her eyes never leaving the magazine. "Just curious. It's been a while since we've all sat down together, you know." I watched Ethan closely, noting the slight tension in his shoulders. Something was definitely off, and I was determined to find out what. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I reviewed the footage from the camera. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee growing cold as I processed what I'd seen. Tessa had indeed come by, rifling through my things with a carelessness that spoke of entitlement. But it was the conversation between her and Ethan that truly shook me. "Ethan, you've got to help me out. Tessa had pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. "I'm in over my head, and I need the money." Ethan had sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Tessa, I can't keep covering for you. Callie's starting to notice things going missing. But you promised." Tessa's voice had risen, panic edging her words. "You said you'd take care of it." Ethan had looked away, his face a mask of frustration. "I'll figure something out, but you need to stop taking things. It's not fair to Callie." The betrayal cut deep, but it was the mention of money that intrigued me. What was Tessa involved in that required such secrecy? And why was Ethan enabling her? I decided to confront Ethan, but I needed to tread carefully. If I came on too strong, he'd shut down, and I'd be left with nothing but more questions. Later that day, as we sat in the living room, I broached the subject. "Ethan, I've noticed some of my things have gone missing," I said, keeping my tone light. "Do you think Tessa might have borrowed them?" He stiffened, his eyes flickering to mine. "Why would you think that?" I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "I just thought maybe she needed them for something. You know how sisters can be." Ethan relaxed slightly, but there was a wariness in his gaze. "I'll talk to her. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." I nodded, letting the matter drop for now. But inside, I was seething. His evasiveness only confirmed my suspicions, and I knew I needed to dig deeper. That evening, I called Simone my best friend and confidant. Her voice was a balm to my frayed nerves, grounding me as I recounted the latest developments. "Callie, this is serious," Simone said, her voice firm. "You can't let this slide. You need to confront him directly." "I know," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. "But I need more information. I have a feeling there's more to this than just Tessa's antics." Simone sighed, her frustration palpable even through the phone. "Just be careful, okay? You don't know what you're dealing with yet." As I hung up, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I couldn't let this go on. The longer I waited, the more tangled the web became. I needed to act, and soon. The next day, I decided to follow Tessa. It was a gamble, but I had to know what she was up to. I trailed her to a seedy part of town, watching as she entered a rundown building. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited, wondering what I'd find. When Tessa emerged, she was with a young woman I didn't recognize. They exchanged a few words before parting ways, and I caught a glimpse of the woman's face. She was striking, with vibrant eyes and an air of innocence. Something about her seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. As I drove home, my mind churned with possibilities. Who was this woman, and what was her connection to Tessa? And more importantly, how did she fit into the tangled mess that was my life? I knew I was getting closer to the truth, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. Whatever lay at the end of this journey, I was determined to see it through. Justice, revenge, or something else entirely, I'd find out soon enough. With the revelation of Tessa's theft and the mysterious woman still fresh in my mind, I knew it was time to confront Ethan. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when the ground beneath us was crumbling. But I needed to be strategic, to approach this with the same meticulous care I used in my work. That evening, as Ethan and I sat down for dinner, I decided to test the waters. Lorraine was out for the evening, and the house felt quieter, almost conspiratorial. I watched Ethan, noting the tension in his jaw, the way he fiddled with his fork. "Ethan," I began, keeping my tone casual, "I ran into someone interesting the other day. A young woman. She seemed to know Tessa." He looked up, a flicker of something, panic, maybe, crossing his face before he masked it with a smile. "Oh, Tessa knows a lot of people." "True," I said, taking a sip of water. "But this one seems special. I think her name was Violet." Ethan's hand stilled, his smile faltering. "Violet? I don't think I know of Violet." His denial was too quick, too practiced. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, but I kept my expression neutral. "Well, she seemed nice. Maybe she's new in town." Ethan nodded, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. I let the conversation drift to safer topics, but inside, I was boiling. He was lying to me, and I needed to know why. The next day, I decided to pay a visit to Simone. I needed her perspective, her unwavering support. As I sat in her cozy living room, the warmth and familiarity of our friendship wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. "Callie, you look like you've seen a ghost," Simone said, handing me a mug of tea. What's going on? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. It's Ethan. I think he's hiding someone from me. I mentioned a woman named Violet and he acted like he didn't know her, but I could tell he was lying. Simone leaned back, her expression thoughtful. And this Violet, she's connected to Tessa? Seems like it. I saw them together, and Tessa seemed nervous. Simone nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly. You need to confront him, Callie. This isn't just about missing items anymore. It's about trust. I nodded, knowing she was right. But confronting Ethan was easier said than done. I needed to catch him off guard, to make sure he couldn't wriggle out of it with more lies. That evening, as Ethan and I sat in the living room, I decided to take the plunge. Ethan, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He looked up, his eyes wary. About what? About Tessa, about Violet, about everything. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze head-on. I know something's going on, and I need you to be honest with me. Ethan's expression shifted, a mix of guilt and defiance. Callie, it's complicated. Tessa's been having a rough time, and I've been trying to help her. Help her how? I pressed, my patience wearing thin. He hesitated, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. She got involved with some people. I was just trying to keep her out of trouble. And Violet? I asked, my voice softening slightly. Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Violet's. She's a friend. She's been helping Tessa with some things. His vagueness only fueled my frustration. Ethan, I need more than that. I need the truth. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. I'm trying to protect you, Callie. I didn't want to drag you into this mess. I sat back, absorbing his words. Protect me? Or protect himself? The lines were blurred, and I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. As the silence stretched between us, I realized that this was a turning point. I had to decide whether to trust him or to dig deeper on my own. The stakes were higher than ever, and I couldn't afford to make a misstep. Later, as I lay in bed, my mind raced with possibilities. Ethan's words had only deepened the mystery, and I knew I couldn't rest until I uncovered the full truth. Whatever it took, I was ready to see this through to the end. And as I drifted into a restless sleep, a new resolve settled over me. Justice, revenge, protection, whatever my motivations, I would find the answers I sought. The game was far from over, and I was determined to win. The tension in the house was suffocating. Lorraine had returned from her evening out, her mood as icy as the winter air. I knew it was only a matter of time before she discovered Ethan's betrayal, and I had to act fast. I needed to expose the truth in a way that would leave no room for doubt or denial. I spent the next day meticulously arranging the evidence. I printed out emails and text messages, each one a piece of the puzzle that painted a damning picture of Ethan's infidelity. I placed them in a neat stack on the dining table, a silent testament to the chaos lurking beneath the surface of our lives. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I felt the weight of the impending confrontation pressing down on me. Lorraine was unusually quiet, her eyes flicking between Ethan and me, as if sensing the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Ethan, oblivious to the evidence awaiting him, was engrossed in his phone. I watched him, my heart a mix of anger and sadness. How had it come to this? How had we ended up on opposite sides of a battlefield I never wanted to fight on? Ethan, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside, there's something on the table you should look at. He glanced up, confusion clouding his features. What is it? Just take a look, I replied, gesturing to the stack of papers. As Ethan picked up the evidence, Lorraine's curiosity got the better of her. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she read over his shoulder. The silence in the room was deafening, the air thick with anticipation. Ethan's face paled as he flipped through the pages, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. Callie, what is this? He demanded, his voice tinged with desperation. It's the truth, Ethan, I replied, meeting his gaze head-on. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Lorraine's eyes were wide, her voice a whisper. Ethan, is this true? Ethan looked between us, trapped in a web of his own making. Mom, I can explain, he started, but Lorraine cut him off with a sharp gesture. I don't want explanations. I want the truth, she snapped, her voice cold and demanding. Ethan's facade crumbled, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Yes, it's true, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The room seemed to close in around us, the walls echoing with the weight of his confession. Lorraine's face was a mask of shock and betrayal, her control slipping away as the reality of her son's actions hit her. I watched the scene unfold, a part of me feeling vindicated, another part aching with the loss of what could have been. I had wanted justice, but the cost was higher than I'd anticipated. As Lorraine turned to me, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and gratitude, I realized that this was a turning point. I had exposed the truth, but the consequences were far-reaching, affecting not just Ethan and me, but the entire family. Callie, I didn't know, Lorraine said, her voice cracking with emotion. I nodded, understanding her pain all too well. I know, Lorraine. I just couldn't keep it to myself any longer. The silence that followed was heavy, each of us lost in our own thoughts. But before I could process what had happened, a new revelation hit me like a freight train. Ethan, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside. I saw Tessa with a woman named Violet. Who is she? Ethan's eyes widened, panic flaring in their depths. Callie, who is she, Ethan? I pressed, my patience wearing thin. She's someone I met through work, he admitted, his voice shaking. I didn't mean for it to get this far. The admission hung in the air, a new layer of betrayal added to the already tangled mess. I felt my resolve harden, the need for justice burning brighter than ever. As the night wore on, I realized that my understanding of revenge and justice had shifted. It wasn't just about exposing the truth. It was about finding a way to move forward, to reclaim my life from the wreckage Ethan had left behind. And as I lay in bed that night, the weight of the day pressing down on me, I knew that the road ahead would be difficult. But I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that I had the strength to see it through. The air was thick with tension as we gathered around the dining table for what would be an unforgettable family dinner. Lorraine had insisted on it, wanting to maintain some semblance of normalcy, though we all knew the evening was anything but normal. I watched Ethan, his face a mask of forced calm, as he picked at his food, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Lorraine, ever the matriarch, cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the silence. Ethan, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room. Ethan sighed, setting down his fork. Mom, I've already explained. No, Ethan, she interrupted, her tone firm. You've made excuses. Now, I want the truth. All of it. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as the weight of her words settled over us. I sat back, observing the unfolding drama, feeling both vindicated and heartbroken. This was the moment I had orchestrated, yet the reality of it was far more painful than I'd anticipated. Ethan hesitated, glancing at me, then back at Lorraine. I messed up, okay? I made some bad decisions, but I was trying to fix things. Fix things. Lorraine's voice was incredulous, her disbelief palpable. By lying to everyone? By dragging Callie into this mess? Ethan's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving him. I didn't want to hurt anyone. But you did, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You hurt all of us, Ethan. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and desperation. Callie, save it, Ethan. I cut him off, the words sharper than I intended. I'm done listening to your half-truths. The silence that followed was suffocating, each of us lost in our own thoughts. But before the tension could dissipate, the doorbell rang, shattering the fragile quiet. Lorraine rose to answer it, her movements stiff and mechanical. A moment later, she returned with Tessa in tow, her expression a mix of defiance and fear. Tessa, what are you doing here? Ethan asked, surprise and irritation lacing his voice. I needed to talk to you, Tessa replied, her gaze darting nervously between us. Lorraine gestured for her to sit, her patience clearly wearing thin. We're all ears, Tessa. Tessa hesitated, wringing her hands. I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. I was just trying to help a friend. A friend? Lorraine echoed, disbelief coloring her tone. What friend? Violet, Tessa admitted, her voice small. She got into some trouble, and I thought I could help. The revelation hung in the air, a new layer of complexity added to the tangled web. I felt my heart sink, the situation spiraling further out of control. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched into his features. Tessa, you should have told me. We could have figured something out together. I didn't want to drag you into it, Tessa replied, her voice cracking. I thought I could handle it on my own. The room was silent, each of us grappling with the implications of Tessa's confession. I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me, the enormity of the situation overwhelming in its complexity. As the evening wore on, the reality of our fractured family dynamics became painfully clear. Lorraine, once so sure of her influence, now seemed lost, her control slipping away with each new revelation. Ethan, caught in a web of his own making, was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. And Tessa, desperate for validation, had unwittingly dragged us all into her mess. I watched them, my heart heavy with a mix of emotions. I had wanted justice, but at what cost? The lines between right and wrong had blurred, leaving me questioning my own motivations. And as I sat there, surrounded by the debris of our once promising future, I realized that this was my lowest point. The path to resolution seemed impossible, the prospect of moving forward daunting in its uncertainty. But even in the midst of despair, a flicker of determination remained. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to give up now. I would find a way to navigate the chaos, to reclaim my life from the wreckage. As the night drew to a close, I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But I was ready to face them, armed with the knowledge that I had the strength to endure. Whatever came next, I would see it through, determined to emerge from the darkness stronger than before. The day began like any other, but I felt the tension in the air, an electric charge that promised change. I knew that today, everything would come to a head. Ethan had been avoiding me since the dinner, and Lorraine's silence was a testament to her shock and disappointment. I needed to confront Ethan, to make him face the consequences of his actions, and there was no more room for delay. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the living room, I gathered my resolve. I found Ethan in his office, surrounded by papers and the remnants of his once carefully constructed life. He looked up as I entered, his expression a mix of weariness and defensiveness. Callie, he began, but I held up a hand, stopping him. No more excuses, Ethan. We need to talk. He nodded, setting aside the papers. I know. I've been a mess, and I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough, I replied, my voice steady. You've hurt everyone around you, and it's time you own up to it. Ethan's gaze dropped, his fingers tapping nervously on the desk. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I thought I could handle it, but everything spiraled out of control. I took a deep breath, the weight of the past weeks pressing down on me. You need to fix this, Ethan. Not just for me, but for yourself. He looked up, a flicker of determination in his eyes. I will. I promise. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, echoing through the house. We both froze, the unexpected interruption adding a new layer of tension. Lorraine answered the door, her voice carrying through the hallway. Ethan, it's for you. Ethan and I exchanged a glance, then made our way to the door. Standing there was a stern-looking man in a suit, a folder clutched in his hand. Mr. Caldwell, the man asked, his tone professional. Yes, that's me, Ethan replied, his voice wary. The man handed him the folder. I'm here on behalf of the bank. We need to discuss the foreclosure proceedings. The words hit like a punch to the gut, the reality of Ethan's financial instability crashing down on us. Lorraine gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. Ethan took the folder, his hands shaking. I thought I had more time, he muttered, flipping through the papers. The man shook his head. I'm afraid not. We'll need to resolve this matter quickly. As the man left, the silence in the room was deafening. Ethan stood there, the weight of his choices visibly crushing him. I watched him, feeling a mix of anger and pity. This was the moment I had been waiting for, yet it felt hollow. Ethan, I said softly, you need to face this. Running away won't solve anything. He nodded, his expression one of defeat. I know. Before he could finish, Tessa appeared, her face pale and drawn. Ethan, I heard. I'm so sorry. Ethan turned to her, his frustration boiling over. Tessa, this isn't just about me. You dragged us all into this mess. Tessa flinched, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to help Violet. Violet. Lorraine's voice cut through the tension, her confusion evident. What does she have to do with this? Tessa hesitated, then took a deep breath. Violet's been struggling, and I tried to help her, but it backfired. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. The room was silent, each of us grappling with the tangled web of lies and half-truths. I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me, the enormity of the situation overwhelming in its complexity. But as I looked around, a new resolve took hold. This was my chance to take control, to find a way forward. I stepped forward, meeting Ethan's gaze. Ethan, you need to be honest with everyone. It's the only way to start fixing this. He nodded, his expression one of determination. You're right, Callie. I'll do whatever it takes. The promise hung in the air, a fragile hope in the midst of chaos. As the reality of the situation settled over us, I knew that the road ahead would be difficult. But for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. The confrontation had brought us face to face with the themes of justice and redemption, forcing us to reevaluate our choices and motivations. And as I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of our fractured lives, I knew that we had the strength to rebuild, to find a new path forward. The journey wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it, armed with the knowledge that I had the power to shape my own destiny. Whatever came next, I would see it through, determined to emerge stronger and wiser than before. A few weeks had passed since the tumultuous events that had upended our lives. I had moved out of Lorraine's house and into a cozy apartment that overlooked a small park. It was a space that felt entirely my own, a sanctuary where I could begin to piece together the fragments of my life. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting warm patterns on the hardwood floors. I sipped my coffee, savoring the quietude that had been so elusive in recent months. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Lorraine, asking if we could meet for lunch. I hesitated for a moment, then agreed. It was time for closure, for all of us. As I walked into the cafe, I spotted Lorraine sitting at a corner table, her expression a mix of anticipation and nervousness. She stood as I approached, greeting me with a tentative smile. Callie, thank you for meeting me, she said, her voice softer than I remembered. Of course, Lorraine, I replied, taking a seat. I think we both need this. She nodded, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. I wanted to apologize for everything. I was so focused on controlling the situation that I didn't see what was happening right under my nose. I shook my head gently. We all made mistakes, Lorraine. What matters is how we move forward. She smiled, a hint of relief in her eyes. Ethan's trying to make things right. He's working with the bank to sort out the financial mess, and he's seeing a counselor. That's good to hear, I said, genuinely pleased. He needs to find his own path, just like I did. Our conversation drifted to lighter topics, and for the first time, I felt a sense of peace between us. Lorraine was still the formidable woman I'd always known, but there was a vulnerability there now, a willingness to change. As we finished our meal, Lorraine reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Thank you, Callie, for everything. You've been stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I smiled, squeezing her hand gently. We're all stronger than we think. After lunch, I took a leisurely walk through the park, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The path had been fraught with challenges, but each one had taught me something valuable about myself and the people around me. Back at my apartment, I found a note slipped under the door. It was from Violet. She wanted to meet to clear the air. I hesitated, memories of her involvement with Ethan and Tessa still raw. But curiosity won out, and I agreed to meet her at a nearby coffee shop. Violet was already there when I arrived, her camera slung over her shoulder. She looked up as I approached, her expression a mix of apology and hope. Callie, I'm so sorry for everything, she began, her voice earnest. I didn't know the full story. I never meant to cause any trouble. I studied her for a moment, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. I believe you, Violet. We were all caught up in something bigger than ourselves. She nodded, relief washing over her features. I've been working on my photography, trying to find my own way. I'd love to show you some of my work. A small smile tugged at my lips. I'd like that. As Violet showed me her photos, I was struck by her talent, the way she captured the world with a unique perspective. It was clear that she had found her calling, and I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that I had played a part in her journey. Our conversation drifted to future plans, and I realized that this unexpected friendship was a testament to the power of forgiveness and growth. We were both moving forward, carving out new paths from the chaos of our pasts. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure settling over me. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had led me to a place of understanding and peace. I had faced the themes of revenge and justice head-on, and in doing so, had found a deeper sense of self. And yet, as I walked home, a lingering question remained. What would the future hold for all of us? The uncertainty was daunting, but it was also exhilarating. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, confident in my ability to navigate the complexities of life. The story wasn't over, but I was ready for the next chapter, whatever it might bring. With each step, I felt lighter, more certain of the path I was on. The future was wide open, and I was ready to meet it head-on, armed with the lessons of the past and the promise of a new beginning.
I never expected to find the letter that would change everything. It was tucked away in Helen's old jewelry box, the one she always kept on her bedside table before the stroke. The paper was crisp, formal-looking, and definitely not meant for my eyes. My name is Maggie, and until that moment, I thought I was doing a pretty good job balancing my roles as a high school French teacher and caregiver to my mother-in-law. Well, almost mother-in-law. Ethan and I weren't married, but after 2 years of living together with his kids, it felt like we were family. I probably shouldn't have been going through Helen's things, but she'd been asking about her pearl necklace all week. Even with her limited speech, she kept pointing to her neck and making distressed sounds. I figured finding it might bring her some comfort. Instead, I found something else entirely. "Dear Mr. Davidson," the letter began. I recognized the law firm's letterhead immediately, the same one that handled Helen's estate planning. As per Mrs. Helen Miller's instructions, we are preparing the necessary documentation to transfer ownership of the family home and associated properties to Miss Margaret Callahan upon. My hands started shaking. I had to sit down on Helen's bed to finish reading. "Everything okay up there?" Ethan called from downstairs. "Mom needs her medication soon." "Just a minute." I folded the letter quickly, my heart racing. Still looking for the pearls. The letter was dated 3 months before Helen's stroke. Before everything changed. Before Ethan started making plans to sell the house and move us all into something more suitable for our future. I glanced at Helen, dozing in her wheelchair by the window. Had she known this was coming? Was this why she'd been so insistent about the jewelry box? "Maggie!" Ethan's footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the letter into my pocket just as he appeared in the doorway, looking every bit the successful civil engineer in his crisp button-down shirt. "The realtor's coming by tomorrow. We should start clearing out some of Mom's old stuff." "Already?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Don't you think it's a bit soon?" He gave me that patient smile I'd started to hate. "The market's hot right now. Besides, Mom doesn't need all this space anymore. The new house will be much better suited for everyone." Everyone except Helen, I thought. She loved this house. 45 years of memories lived in these walls. "Found them." I pulled out the pearl necklace, forcing a smile. Right where they always were. That night, I couldn't sleep. The letter burned in my pocket like a live coal. Beside me, Ethan snored peacefully, probably dreaming about the luxury home he'd been eyeing in the new development across town. Downstairs, I could hear Jake's video games despite it being well past midnight. Olivia's light was still on too. She'd been staying up later and later, growing more distant by the day. I slipped out of bed and went to check on Helen. She was awake, her eyes following me as I entered her room. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered, sitting beside her. "About the letter?" She blinked slowly, deliberately. Her right hand twitched on the armrest. "Why me?" I asked, but I knew she couldn't answer. "Not anymore." A text lit up my phone. My mother, Barbara, checking in like she always did. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I stared at the message, thinking about the letter, about Helen's trust in me, about Ethan's plans that suddenly felt more like betrayal than progress. The comfortable life I thought I had was unraveling, revealing something darker underneath. "Fine," I texted back. "Everything's fine." But nothing was fine. And as I sat there in the darkness, watching Helen drift back to sleep, I realized I had a choice to make. One that would either destroy this family or save it from itself. I just wasn't sure which yet. The realtor's heels clicked against the hardwood floors as she toured our home, Helen's home, with a tablet in hand and a practiced smile. I watched from the kitchen as Ethan guided her through each room, his voice animated in a way I rarely heard anymore. "The master suite has incredible potential," he was saying. With just a few updates. I gripped my coffee mug tighter, the letter from yesterday still burning a hole in my pocket. Helen sat beside me in her wheelchair, her eyes following the realtor's movement with an intensity that made me wonder how much she really understood. "Mom, did you take your pills?" Olivia breezed into the kitchen, already dressed for school in her field hockey uniform. She barely glanced at me as she grabbed a protein bar. "I gave them to her an hour ago," I said, trying to catch her eye. "Hey, I was thinking maybe we could." "Dad," Olivia called out, cutting me off. "Is it okay if I stay at Ashley's tonight? Her parents got a new pool." Ethan appeared in the doorway. "Sure, sweetie. Just make sure your homework's done first." I felt my jaw tighten. Last week, when I'd suggested Olivia needed more structure with her studying, Ethan had dismissed my concerns. "She's going through a lot," he'd said. "We need to give her space." The realtor appeared behind him, tapping at her tablet. "Mr. Miller, these comparables are very promising. With the current market, could we discuss this privately?" I interrupted, standing up. "Ethan, just for a minute?" He gave me that look, the one that said I was being difficult. "Can it wait? Mrs. Carson has another appointment." "It's about Helen's wishes," I said firmly. The realtor tactfully stepped away, and Ethan followed me into the living room. Before I could speak, Jake thundered down the stairs, gaming headset still on. "Dad, the Wi-Fi's acting up again. Can we get better internet at the new house?" "Later, bud," Ethan said, then turned to me. "What's so urgent?" I pulled out the letter, my hands trembling slightly. "I found this yesterday. It's from Helen's lawyer." He barely glanced at it. "More estate paperwork?" "The lawyer's already handled everything." "No, this is different. Helen wants it." A crash from the kitchen interrupted us. We rushed back to find Helen's wheelchair tipped sideways, her breakfast spilled across the floor. She was making distressed sounds, trying to reach for something. "I got it," Olivia said, already helping her grandmother up. "God, who left their bag in the way? She could have been hurt." "My bag. I dropped it when I went to make coffee." The guilt hit me hard, even as I moved to help. "This is exactly why we need a more suitable house," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. "There's just not enough space here anymore." "But that's not what Helen—" "Maggie," he cut me off, his voice low. "I know you care about Mom, but this isn't up for discussion. The house is being sold. End of story." The realtor chose that moment to reappear. "Mr. Miller? I have those contracts ready whenever you'd like to review them." I watched Ethan walk away, the letter still unread in my hand. Olivia had already disappeared upstairs, and Jake was back in his gaming world. Only Helen remained, her eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't quite read. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Lunch today?" I looked around at the family I'd tried so hard to be part of. At the mess on the floor, the realtor's calculating gaze, Ethan's dismissive back, and Helen's knowing eyes. Something shifted inside me, a quiet determination taking root. "Yes," I texted back. "We need to talk." Because now I understood, this wasn't just about a house or an inheritance. This was about power, about being heard, about standing up for what's right. And if Ethan wouldn't listen, well, Helen had given me the means to make him pay attention. I just had to figure out how to use it. The box of old papers nearly crushed my toes when it slipped from the attic shelf. I'd been searching through Helen's storage while everyone was out, hoping to find more evidence to support the letter, when a yellowed newspaper clipping fluttered to the floor. The headline made my blood run cold. "Miller Construction under investigation, major safety violations alleged." I sank to the dusty attic floor, scanning the article dated 15 years ago. Ethan's father, Richard Miller, had allegedly covered up structural defects in several major projects. The case mysteriously disappeared before reaching court, but the article mentioned substantial payoffs and destroyed evidence. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Where are you?" "The mortgage broker's waiting." I ignored it, my hands shaking as I dug deeper into the box. More articles, letters, and what looked like copies of canceled checks. Each piece painted a darker picture of the Miller family's past. "Maggie!" Jake's voice startled me. He stood at the attic entrance, gaming headset around his neck. "Dad's getting mad. He says you're not answering your phone." "I'll be right down." I stuffed the article into my pocket alongside Helen's inheritance letter. Just cleaning up some old things. Jake lingered, shifting uncomfortably. Hey, about yesterday. I didn't mean to be a jerk about the Wi-Fi thing. It's okay. Dad says once we move, everything will be better. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Like we'll be a real family again. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Before I could respond, Olivia's voice carried up the stairs. Jake! Dad needs us downstairs. The broker wants to meet the whole family. I followed them down, my mind racing. In the living room, Ethan stood with a well-dressed man, both examining papers spread across the coffee table. Helen sat in her usual spot by the window, but something about her expression seemed different. More alert, almost warning. There you are, Ethan said, his smile not reaching his eyes. We're just finalizing the sale details. The broker needs all resident signatures. Resident signaturas. I echoed. The broker nodded. Yes, anyone currently living in the property needs to sign off. I cannot olosif. My fingers brushed the newspaper article in my pocket. Actually, I need to discuss something with Ethan first. In private. Not now, Maggie, Ethan said through clenched teeth. Yes, now. Itarn to the broker. Could you give us a moment? Once he stepped out, Ethan rounded on me. What are you doing? This is a crucial meeting. Did you know about your father's scandal? I pulled out the article. About the construction cover-ups? The color drained from his face. His eyes darted to Helen, then back to me. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Is this why you're so desperate to sell? To move somewhere new and pretend none of this happened? You don't understand, he hissed. My father worked his entire life to build this company. I've spent years rebuilding our reputation. By selling Helen's house? The house she specifically left to me. The room went silent. Olivia and Jake stared at us, wide-eyed. Helen's hand twitched on her armrest. What do you mean, left to you? Olivia asked. I pulled out the inheritance letter. Your grandmother made arrangements before her stroke. She wanted. Enough. Ethan snatched both papers from my hands. Kids, go upstairs. Now. But Dad. Now. After they left, Ethan's voice was dangerously quiet. You had no right to go digging through our past. No right to question my decisions for this family. Your decisions? I laughed bitterly. What about Helen's decisions? What about what she wanted? What she wanted doesn't matter anymore. She's not capable of making those choices now. Behind him, Helen's hand moved deliberately to her throat, where her pearl necklace lay. Our eyes met, and in that moment I understood. She hadn't just left me the house. She'd left me the truth. You're wrong, I said, straightening my spine. She's more capable than you think. And so am I. I walked out of the room, leaving Ethan with his crumpled papers and his secrets. Because now I had something more valuable than an inheritance. I had leverage. And I intended to use it. The silence in my mother's kitchen felt heavier than usual. Barbara watched me over her coffee cup as I paced, the morning's events still churning in my stomach. He's selling the house anyway, I said, stopping at the window. The broker's probably there right now, papers all ready to sign. Without your signature? Barbara set her cup down. From what you've told me about that letter, he can't do that. He'll find a way. My phone buzzed again. Another missed call from Ethan. He always does. A car pulled into the driveway, Mrs. Thompson's silver Mercedes. Perfect. Just what I needed. The woman who'd introduced me to Ethan 2 years ago, probably here to remind me how lucky I was to have him. I invited her, Barbara said, reading my expression. There's something you need to hear. Mrs. Thompson bustled in, clutching her designer handbag like armor. Meggie, dear, you look terrible. Thanks, I muttered. Show her, Barbara urged. Mrs. Thompson's perfectly manicured hands shook slightly as she pulled out a folder. I should have told you this when I first introduced you to Ethan, but, well, I thought things might be different this time. Inside were photographs, Ethan with different women, all similar to me in age and appearance. News clippings about property disputes, contested wills, allegations of fraud. He's done this before? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. 3 times, Mrs. Thompson said. Always with caregivers. Women who helped with his mother after Sarah, his wife, passed. None of them knew about Helen's real estate holdings until it was too late. My phone buzzed again. A text from Olivia. Where are you? Dad's acting weird and Jake won't come out of his room. The kids, I whispered. They don't know. They were younger then, Mrs. Thompson said. Each time, he'd move them before they could get too attached to anyone. The doorbell rang, making us all jump. Through the front window, I saw Ethan's car in the street. I'll handle this, Barbara stood, but I stopped her. No. It's time I did. Ethan's smile was strained when I opened the door. Maggie, we need to talk. The broker's waiting, and... He spotted Mrs. Thompson through the doorway, and his face hardened. What's she doing here? Showing me your greatest hits, I said, holding up the folder. Quite a pattern you've got going. He stepped closer, dropping his voice. Whatever she told you, it's not true. Like the construction scandal wasn't true? Like Helen's letter isn't true. The kids need stability, Maggie. A fresh start. You understand that, don't you? His tone was gentle, reasonable. The same voice he'd used to convince me to move in, to take care of Helen, to build a life with his family. No, I said. What they need is the truth. My phone buzzed again, Jake this time. Found something weird in Dad's office. Can you come home? Ethan saw the message over my shoulder. Something flashed in his eyes. Fear? The kids are off limits, he said quietly. Whatever you think you're doing, whatever revenge you're planning, leave them out of it. Like you left them out of your schemes? How many fresh starts have they had, Ethan? He grabbed my arm, not quite hard enough to hurt, but enough to make his point. Don't make this messier than it needs to be. Let go of her. Barbara appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. Or the police can hear about all your fresh starts. He released me, straightening his jacket. Think about what you're doing, Maggie. Think about the kids. That's all I could think about. After he left, I stared at Jake's message, my hands trembling. Whatever he'd found in Ethan's office, it was another piece of the puzzle. One that could either save us all or destroy everything. What are you going to do? Barbara asked. I grabbed my keys. I'm going to get the truth. All of it. And then I'm going to make sure those kids never need another fresh start again. Because sometimes I was learning, revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about making things right. My laptop screen glowed in the darkness of my mother's guest room, illuminating the faces of my new online French students. 3 sessions tonight, 2 tomorrow morning. Every extra dollar counted now. Merci beaucoup, Madame Callahan. A student said as our lesson ended. Same time next week? I nodded, forcing a smile. Next week. Would I even be here next week? Jake's discovery in Ethan's office haunted me. A hidden USB drive containing emails between Ethan and his father's old business partners, discussing contingency plans if their past dealings ever came to light. The same drive held detailed records of Helen's properties. Not just the house, but commercial buildings, land developments. A small fortune, all carefully hidden. My phone lit up with a text from Olivia. Dad's taking us to look at private schools tomorrow. Says we're definitely moving now. What's going on? Before I could respond, another message appeared, this one from an unknown number. Heard you're asking questions about Richard Miller's old projects. Meet tomorrow? Bring the USB. I switched off my phone, my hands shaking. Through the wall, I could hear Barbara talking to someone. Mrs. Thompson again, probably sharing more horror stories about Ethan's past. My laptop pinged. A new email from the online teaching platform. They wanted me to take on more students, maybe even develop a full curriculum. The money would be good. Enough to. A knock at the door made me jump. Maggie. It was Jake, his voice barely a whisper. Canuno comein. I opened the door to find him clutching his backpack, eyes red. Dad's acting weird. He's in his office shredding stuff, and he keeps making phone calls. Does he know you're here? Jake shook his head. I told him I was staying at Matt's. But I found something else, something worse than the USB. He pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were medical records, Helen's tests from before her stroke, and a prescription bottle with a label I didn't recognize. I Googled the medication, Jake said. It's not what they told us she was taking. And look at the dates. The prescription was filled 2 days before Helen's stroke. My blood ran cold as I remembered Ethan's insistence on handling all of Helen's medications himself. Jake, this is serious. We need to. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, where's Jake? Not at Matt's. Bring him home now. He can't make us go back, Jake said, but his voice trembled. Right. I looked at this kid, this brave, terrified kid who'd figured out more than any 13-year-old should have to. At my laptop with its promise of escape. At the medical records that could destroy everything Ethan had built. Pack your things, I said. You're staying here tonight. Tomorrow we're getting your sister. And Helen. Her too. I opened my laptop again, but not to the teaching platform. Instead, I pulled up my email and started typing. To Helen's lawyer, to the police, to everyone who needed to know the truth. Another text from the unknown number. Time's running out. The evidence won't stay buried forever. They were right. But maybe that was the point. Maybe some things needed to see the light of day, no matter how ugly the truth might be. I heard Barbara's voice again, clearer now. She was on the phone with someone. Yes, officer. We have documentation of everything. Jake looked at me, his father's determination in his eyes, but none of his father's cruelty. What do we do now? I closed my laptop. The time for hiding behind screens was over. Now, we fight back. But we do it the right way. Because revenge wasn't just about getting even anymore. It was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. And sometimes the best revenge is simply telling the truth, no matter who it hurts. Even if it hurts us all. The Miller house looked different in the rain. Darker. More threatening. I sat in my car, watching Ethan's silhouette move behind the living room curtains, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. My phone buzzed. Barbara. Police want statement now. Where are you? I switched it off. Jake was safe at my mother's house, but Olivia was still inside with Ethan. And Helen. God, Helen. The front door opened. Ethan stepped onto the porch, his face illuminated by a flash of lightning. I knew you'd come back. I got out of the car, clutching the envelope of medical records. Where's Olivia? Upstairs, packing. We're leaving tonight. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You've caused quite a mess, Maggie. But we can still fix this. Fix it? Like you fixed things with Helen? His expression hardened. You don't understand what you're dealing with. I understand enough. I pulled out the prescription bottle. This medication, it causes strokes in high doses. Convenient timing, wasn't it? Right before she could change her will. Dad! Olivia appeared in the doorway, her face pale. What's she talking about? Go back inside, sweetie. Maggie's just upset. Show her the USB, Ethan. I took a step forward. Show her what your father did. What you helped cover up. How many families lost their homes because of faulty construction? How many lives did you ruin? You're ruining lives right now. He grabbed my arm, harder than before. Everything I did was for them. For their future. Let go of her. Olivia's voice cracked. Dad, you're hurting her. She's lying to you, Olivia. She's trying to tear us apart. A car door slammed behind us. Mrs. Thompson emerged from her Mercedes, holding up her phone. It's all recorded, Ethan. Everything. The police are on their way. His grip tightened. You don't want to do this, Maggie. Think about the kids. Think about. A weak cry came from inside the house. Helen. Mom. Olivia rushed back inside. I tried to follow, but Ethan blocked the door. She's fine. She just needs her medication. The real medication? Or more of what you gave her before? His face twisted. You think you're so righteous? You're nothing. A substitute teacher playing house with a family that isn't yours. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Dad! Olivia screamed from inside. Grandma's not breathing. Everything happened at once. Ethan shoved past me, running inside. Mrs. Thompson was calling 911. And I froze. Because this wasn't revenge anymore. This was life and death. I found them in Helen's room. Ethan performing CPR while Olivia sobbed. Helen's eyes were open, fixed on me, trying to say something. Her hand moved to her neck, to the pearl necklace. The same gesture she'd made earlier. The necklace, I whispered. Olivia, get her necklace. Inside the clasp was a microchip, a recording device. Helen's insurance policy, hidden in plain sight all these months. Ethan saw it and lunged, but the police burst in before he could reach it. As they led him away, he kept shouting about family, about loyalty, about everything he'd sacrificed. The paramedics worked on Helen. Olivia clung to me, shaking. I heard everything. In his office. The calls. The plans. I should have said something sooner. This isn't your fault, I told her, but my voice was hollow. Because in trying to protect everyone, I'd nearly lost them all. Helen was being loaded onto a stretcher, her fate uncertain. Jake was traumatized. Olivia's world was shattered. And me? I stood in the wreckage of a family I'd tried to save, wondering if revenge was worth the cost. The rain kept falling, washing away everything except the truth. And sometimes I was learning, the truth hurts more than any lie. But at least it was real. At least it was ours. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. The hospital waiting room felt like limbo. Helen was in surgery. Complications from the previous stroke, the doctors said. Jake slept curled up in a chair while Olivia paced, still wearing her rain-soaked clothes. My phone lit up. Unknown number. Evidence received. Coming to take statement. Hold position. That's when Ethan walked in, flanked by 2 officers. They'd let him come say goodbye before taking him to the station. His hands were cuffed in front of him, but he still carried himself like he owned the room. 5 minutes, one officer said. Olivia stopped pacing. Jake stirred but didn't wake. You won, Ethan said quietly. Congratulations. The recording, the documents, Helen's statement. You've destroyed everything. You destroyed it yourself. I stood, keeping my voice low. Every lie, every manipulation, every pill you gave Helen. I protected this family. Protected our legacy. Dur legacy. Olivia's voice cracked. Is that what you call drugging Grandma? Lying to us about Mom. Ethan's facade cracked. What are you talking about? I found Mom's letters. Olivia's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. The ones you hid. She knew about Grandpa's scandal. Was going to report it. Then she had that accident. The color drained from Ethan's face. Olivia, you don't understand. I understand everything now. She played a voice recording. Sarah Miller, Ethan's late wife, detailing her discoveries about the construction fraud. The recording was dated 2 days before her fatal car crash. Jake was awake now, watching with wide eyes. The necklace wasn't Helen's only insurance policy, I said. Sarah had one too. And Olivia found it. Ethan lunged forward, but the officers caught him. You turned my own children against me. No, Jake stood up. You did that yourself, Dad. We just finally saw it. A doctor appeared in the doorway. Miss Callahan? Mrs. Miller is asking for you. This isn't over, Ethan called as the officers led him away. That house, those properties, they belong to the Miller family. You're right, I said. They do belong to the Miller family. Just not your version of it. Helen was pale but alert in her hospital bed. Her right hand moved deliberately to her throat, where the pearl necklace used to be. The recording, she whispered, her voice stronger than I'd heard in months. You found it. You knew. All this time. She smiled weakly. Waited. For right person. Someone who'd protect them. Olivia and Jake appeared in the doorway, hesitant. Come, Helen beckoned. My real legacy. As they huddled around her bed, I felt the weight of everything shift. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about protection. About truth. About building something new from the ashes of what was lost. My phone buzzed again. Federal investigators want to meet. Multiple cases linked to Miller construction fraud. Victims seeking restitution. What happens now? Jake asked, his hand in his grandmother's. Helen's Eish met Mina. In them, I saw not the stroke victim Ethan had tried to silence, but the fierce matriarch who'd orchestrated her family's salvation. Now, I said, we rebuild. The right way. Because sometimes the greatest act of revenge isn't destroying something. It's creating something better in its place. Olivia took my hand, Jake held his sister's, and Helen watched us with tears in her eyes. A chain of trust and truth that no amount of lies could break. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. 6 months later, I stood in Helen's garden, watching Jake and Olivia plant new roses. The old house looked different now, brighter somehow, despite the autumn chill. The settlement money came through, Barbara said, joining me with 2 cups of coffee. The victims of the construction fraud? I nodded. Helen insisted on selling everything except this house. Said the money should go back to the families who lost their homes. Inside, Helen's voice carried through the open window as she guided her speech therapist through another session. Her recovery had surprised everyone, except maybe herself. My phone buzzed with a notification from my online teaching platform. The French curriculum I'd developed was gaining traction, providing a steady income that gave us all breathing room to heal. Did you see this? Olivia came over, holding up her phone. A news article showed Ethan in his prison jumpsuit, heading to court for another hearing. He's trying to appeal the sentence. Let him try, I said. The truth isn't going anywhere. Jake looked up from his roses. Mom's letters helped other people come forward. The detective said there might be more cases. Your mother would be proud of you both, I said. Standing up for the truth like that. Olivia's eyes welled up. I keep thinking about what she must have felt, discovering everything alone. At least we had each other. A car pulled into the driveway. Mrs. Thompson with more boxes of documents. The investigation was still expanding, uncovering years of corruption that went beyond just the Miller family. There's something else, Barbara said quietly. The prison requested a family visit. The kids froze. Helen appeared in the doorway, her face concerned but steady. We don't have to decide now, I said. Or ever. It's your choice. What about you? Jake asked. Will you come with us? If we go. The question hung in the air. 6 months ago, I'd wanted revenge. had dreamed of seeing Ethan face justice for everything he'd done. But now, I'll be here, I said. Whatever you decide, that's what family does. Helen smiled, that knowing smile that had started everything with a pearl necklace and a hidden letter. Later that evening, as the kids did homework at the kitchen table and Helen dozed in her favorite chair, I found myself in the garden again. The roses wouldn't bloom until spring, but their roots were taking hold, growing stronger beneath the surface. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. More evidence found. Could affect appeal. Need your statement. I looked through the window at my unlikely family, not bound by blood or marriage, but by something stronger. By choice. By truth. By the kind of love that grows in the aftermath of storms. Coming, I texted back, because revenge hadn't given me what I wanted. Justice hadn't either, not completely. What had saved us was simpler than that, the courage to speak truth, to choose love over fear, to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. Olivia called from inside. Maggie, can you help me with my French homework? Just a minute, I called back, taking one last look at the garden. The roses would bloom again. Different from before, maybe, but stronger for having been replanted. Just like us. I turned toward the warm light of home, leaving the shadows of the past where they belonged, behind us, fading in the growing dark. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. It's about growing something beautiful in its place, and watching it bloom.
The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was knee-deep in quarterly reports. My name is Harper, and that call would end up turning my carefully structured life inside out. We want you to head up the new branch, my boss said, her voice crackling through my phone speaker. It's in your hometown, Millbrook. The salary bump is significant, and you'd have full autonomy over operations. I nearly dropped my coffee. Running my own branch had been my goal for years. But Millbrook? I'd spent the last 6 years building a life in Chicago specifically to avoid that place. I'll need your answer by Friday, she continued. The Thompson Industries contract depends on having someone with local connections leading the project. Thompson Industries. Of course. The same company my brother Ethan worked for, or more accurately, the company owned by his fiancée's family. The universe really does have a sick sense of humor. I'll think about it, I managed to say, even as my stomach twisted into knots. That evening, I called my younger sister Zoe. She picked up on the first ring like she always does. Harper. Save me from this wedding planning nightmare, she groaned. Vanessa's making us try on the 5th set of bridesmaid dresses because apparently Coral is so last season now. How's Mia handling it? I asked, thinking of our 15-year-old sister. Oh, you know Mia. She's doing that thing where she smiles and nods while plotting revenge in her head. Zoe paused. You sound weird. What's up? I told her about the job offer. The line went quiet for so long I thought we'd lost connection. Mom and Dad are going to flip, she finally said. In a good way, I mean. They've been weird since Ethan got engaged to Vanessa. Like they're trying to prove something to the Thompsons. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, I admitted. Remember last Christmas? When Dad practically tripped over himself showing off Ethan's engagement photos to Richard Thompson, while completely ignoring your promotion announcement. Yeah, that was subtle. I walked to my apartment window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. 6 years of building a life here, of proving I could make it on my own. But this opportunity, it was everything I'd worked for. You should take it, Zoe said firmly. Show them you're not just the middle child who ran away. Plus, I miss you. And Mia needs someone sane around here. Later that night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Vanessa, Ethan, and my parents at some fancy restaurant. The caption read, "Family dinner planning the wedding. Wish you could have made it.
V.
I hadn't been invited. Of course. The next morning, I called my boss and accepted the position. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about proving them wrong. When I called my parents to tell them I was moving back, my mother's response was telling. Oh, that's wonderful, honey. And perfect timing. You can help with the wedding preparations. Vanessa's father is sparing no expense, you know. The Thompsons really know how to do things properly. I bit back what I wanted to say. Instead, I replied, actually, I'll be pretty busy. I'm running the new branch that's handling their biggest account. The silence on the other end was satisfying, but what my father said next caught me off guard. The Thompson Industries expansion project? But Ethan said he was handling that through Vanessa's family business. That was news to me. And judging by my father's tone, it was about to become a very big problem. Well, I said, keeping my voice steady, I guess we'll all be working together then. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. But for once, I wasn't going to back down. It was time to show my family, especially Vanessa, exactly what the forgotten middle child could do. Moving back into my childhood home felt like stepping into a time machine, except everything had been redecorated to Vanessa's taste. The familiar family photos were replaced with professional engagement shots, and my old bedroom had been converted into what my mother called the wedding planning room. I was unpacking in Mia's room, my temporary accommodation, when I heard the commotion downstairs. Zoe's voice carried up the stairs, strained and defensive. But I already bought the dress you approved last week. That was before I saw what the Thompson cousins are wearing, Vanessa's voice replied, dripping with false sympathy. We can't have the bridesmaids looking
Discount, can we?
I gripped the doorframe, counting to 10 before heading downstairs. The scene in the living room stopped me cold. Zoe stood in the middle of the room, wearing a pale blue bridesmaid dress that looked perfect on her. Mia sat in the corner, headphones on, pretending to do homework while obviously eavesdropping. Vanessa circled Zoe like a shark, phone in hand. Harper. My mother jumped up from the couch. Perfect timing. Maybe you can help convince Zoe that Vanessa's right about the dresses. The new ones are only $3,000 each, Vanessa added, not looking up from her phone. I'm sure between the three of you girls, you can manage it. $3,000. For a dress Zoe would wear once. I watched my sister's face crumple slightly before she caught herself. Actually, I said, keeping my voice level, I have a meeting with Richard Thompson tomorrow about the new branch. Maybe I should ask him about the wedding budget while I'm there. The room went silent. Vanessa's head snapped up, her perfectly maintained smile slipping for just a second. Oh, didn't Ethan tell you? She recovered quickly. Daddy's letting him handle all the business aspects of the expansion. We wouldn't want to confuse things with too many cooks in the kitchen. Funny, I replied. That's not what my contract says. The front door opened and Ethan walked in, his timing impeccable as always. What's not what your contract says? Before I could respond, Vanessa was at his side, her hand on his arm. Darling, I thought we agreed you'd handle the Thompson Industries project? Harper seems to think she's running it. Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to that familiar, patronizing smile. Come on, sis. You know how these things work. The Thompson name carries weight around here. It'll be better for everyone if I take point on this. Everyone meaning you? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Harper, my father warned from his armchair. Your brother has connections here. Real relationships with the business community. Maybe it's time to be practical. I looked around the room, at Zoe in her beautiful dress that apparently wasn't good enough, at Mia pretending not to care, at my parents deferring to Vanessa's every whim. 6 years away hadn't changed anything. Practical, I repeated. Like spending $3,000 on new dresses when the ones we have are perfectly fine? Or letting Ethan take credit for my work because he's marrying into the right family? You always do this, Ethan sighed. Turn everything into a competition. This is my wedding we're talking about. No, Vanessa cut in, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes cold. This is about family. And family supports each other, doesn't it? Unless. You're not planning to make things difficult, are you, Harper? The threat was clear in her tone. I looked at Zoe, who shook her head slightly, a warning not to make things worse. But I was done playing nice. You know what? You're right, Vanessa. Family does support each other, which is why I'm taking Zoe shopping tomorrow for whatever dress she wants to wear. And as for the Thompson Industries project, I pulled out my phone, showing the email from my boss. Maybe you should read the contract terms more carefully. Both of you. I turned and walked out, but not before catching Mia's small smile behind her textbook. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Vanessa's voice, sharp and clear. Well, I suppose some people just don't understand how things work here anymore. Such a shame. Game on, I thought. Let's see how things really work. The truth hit me like a slap to the face when I found the papers in my father's home office. I wasn't looking for them. I was searching for last year's tax documents for the new branch paperwork. Instead, I found loan agreements between my father and Richard Thompson, dated back to when Ethan first started dating Vanessa. My hands shook as I read the details. Personal loans, business investments, property deals, all arranged through Thompson Industries, all benefiting my brother. The amounts made my stomach turn. No wonder my parents had been so eager to push this wedding forward. My phone buzzed, a text from Mia. SOS. V making me skip dance recital for wedding stuff. Again. I was still staring at the message when my father walked in. He froze in the doorway, his eyes going from my face to the papers in my hands. Those are private business matters, he said quietly. Private. I held up one of the documents. Like how Ethan's new position at Thompson Industries came with a $100,000 signing bonus that went straight to paying off your debts. He closed the door behind him. You don't understand the pressure we've been under. The recession hit the business hard. When Ethan met Vanessa, you sold him to them. I cut in. And now you're letting them walk all over this family because you're afraid they'll call in their debts. I'm protecting this family. His voice rose sharply. Richard Thompson could destroy everything we've built. Your mother's security, your sister's future. By letting Vanessa control their lives? Making Mia miss her performances? Forcing Zoe to spend money she doesn't have. A knock at the door made us both jump. Vanessa stood there, wearing her practiced smile. I thought I heard voices, she said sweetly. Harper, Daddy was asking about you. He mentioned something about the project management role being better suited for someone with more local experience. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. The implications were clear: play nice, or watch my career disappear too. Actually, I said, I just found some very interesting documents about local experience. Want to take a look? Vanessa's smile flickered. I'm sure whatever business arrangements exist are perfectly normal for families in our position. Our position? I laughed. You mean where you hold financial threats over everyone's heads to get what you want? Harper, my father warned. No, I snapped. I'm done pretending. Did you know she's making Mia skip her dance recital? The one she's been practicing for all year. The wedding planning schedule is very tight, Vanessa said. Sacrifices have to be made. Family understands that. Family understands limits. I corrected her. Family doesn't use money as a weapon. Vanessa stepped closer, dropping her voice. Speaking of limits, it would be a shame if Daddy had to reconsider the expansion project's management structure. Ethan's been so looking forward to proving himself. Is that what this is about? I held up my phone, showing her my email inbox. Because I have some interesting correspondence about who actually secured the Thompson Industries contract. Want to guess whose name isn't on any of it? The color drained from her face. Before she could respond, Ethan appeared in the doorway. What's going on? He asked, looking between us. Your sister was just leaving, Vanessa said firmly. I gathered the documents, watching my father's face fall as I tucked them into my bag. No, I think I'll stay. We should all talk about these loan agreements. As a family. Harper, please, my father began. Dad. Ethan's confusion was genuine. What loan agreements? I met Vanessa's gaze. Should I tell him, or would you like to explain how his perfect job offer came about? The silence that followed was deafening. Sometimes revenge isn't about winning. It's about forcing the truth into the light. As I watched my brother's face change from confusion to understanding, I realized this was just the beginning of what would become a very uncomfortable family reunion. Well, Vanessa said, her mask finally cracking, I suppose we'll have to discuss this at dinner. All of us, including Daddy. The threat in her voice was clear, but for once, I wasn't backing down. Let her bring Richard Thompson into this. Maybe it was time everyone saw exactly what kind of family we'd become. The family dinner that night was like watching a bomb tick down in slow motion. Richard Thompson sat at our dining table, his presence making everyone except Vanessa visibly uncomfortable. My mother's hands shook as she served the food, and my father kept glancing between Richard and the documents I'd discovered, which now sat in my laptop bag by the door. Mia slipped into the seat next to me, whispering, "Did you know he was coming?" I shook my head, watching Vanessa orchestrate the seating arrangements, so Ethan sat between her and her father. My brother looked pale, still processing the revelations about his job from earlier. "So, Harper," Richard said, cutting into a steak, "tell me about your plans for the new branch. I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on local partnerships." Before I could answer, Vanessa jumped in. "Daddy, remember what we discussed about keeping business matters separate from family time?" "Actually," I said, meeting Richard's eyes, "I'd love to discuss the project, especially since there seems to be some confusion about who's handling what." Zoe kicked me under the table, a warning, but I was done playing nice. "Speaking of handling things," Vanessa said sweetly, "Mia, have you told everyone about changing your dance recital date?" Mia froze beside me. I haven't decided." "Oh, but you must," Vanessa pressed. "The wedding rehearsal schedule is already set. Richard, you understand the importance of commitment, don't you?" I watched my youngest sister shrink in her chair, and something inside me snapped. "Mia's not changing her recital," I said firmly. "Harper, my father warned."
No.
I set down my fork. "Mia's been working toward this for months. The wedding can work around it." Richard looked between us, his expression curious. I wasn't aware there was a scheduling conflict. "There isn't," Vanessa said quickly. "Just a small misunderstanding about priorities." "Priorities?" I laughed. "Like the priority of using your father's money to control this entire family?" The room went silent. My mother gasped softly, and my father half rose from his chair. "That's enough," Ethan said, but his voice wavered. Richard set down his utensils. "What exactly do you mean by that, Harper?" I reached for my bag, but Vanessa was faster. "Daddy, Harper's just upset because she's having trouble adjusting to being home. Maybe we should." "Let her speak," Richard interrupted, his tone sharp. "I'm interested in hearing this." I pulled out the loan documents. "Your daughter and my brother's perfect relationship? It was bought and paid for by Thompson Industries. Every job offer, every investment. It's all been about control." "These are private family matters," my father started, but Richard held up his hand. "David, is this true?" The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa's perfect mask cracked slightly as she watched her father scan the documents. "Mr. Thompson," my mother began, "we never meant—" "Stop," Mia suddenly said, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Just stop lying. All of you." She turned to Richard. "Do you want to know what else your daughter's been doing? Check my phone. I recorded everything." Vanessa's face went white. "You what?" Mia pulled out her phone, hands shaking but determined. "Every threat, every manipulation. I saved it all." "Mia, honey," my mother pleaded, "think about what you're doing to the family." "The family?" I stood up. "Look what we've already done to this family. We're all so scared of losing the Thompsons' money that we're letting Vanessa destroy us." Richard took Mia's phone, his expression unreadable. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to have a very different kind of family discussion." Vanessa reached for the phone. "Daddy, please." "Not now, Vanessa." His voice was ice. "Harper, Mia, would you join me in the study? Bring those documents." As we stood to leave, I caught Ethan's eye. For the first time since this all began, he looked lost, the golden sun finally seeing his perfect world crumble. "The truth hurts, doesn't it?" I said softly as I passed him. "Sometimes revenge comes in unexpected ways," I thought, following Richard Thompson down the hall. "And sometimes it's not about winning. It's about finally being heard." The email from Vanessa arrived at 3 a.m., a week after the disastrous dinner. I stared at my phone, reading and rereading the attached photos, old family pictures I'd never seen before, showing my father meeting with Richard Thompson years ago, long before Ethan and Vanessa started dating. The message was simple: $10,000.
Cash.
Or these and the real story behind them go public. Think about what that would do to your precious family name.
My hands shook as I got dressed.
Dawn was breaking when I pulled up to the coffee shop where Ethan had asked to meet me. He sat in the corner, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Did you know?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from him. "About Dad and Richard?"
No.
He pushed a coffee toward me. "But I found more documents last night. The Thompson connection goes back further than we thought. He's been laundering money through the business." The world tilted sideways. "What?" "Vanessa knows everything. She's been collecting evidence for years, waiting for the right moment." He looked up, his eyes hollow. "The wedding isn't just about status, Harper. It's protection. For all of us." My phone buzzed. Another email from Vanessa. More photos. "She wants money from me," I said. "To keep quiet. Just pay it," Ethan pleaded.
"Please."
"Mom can't handle a scandal. And Dad. They'll arrest him, Harper." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "So, we just let her win? Let her keep controlling everyone? It's not about winning anymore." He ran his hands through his hair. "Mia showed Richard those recordings, and now he's launching an internal audit. If they find the money trail..." My phone rang. "Zoe. Harper, you need to come home.
Now."
Vanessa's here with her lawyer." When we arrived, the scene in the living room made my stomach drop. Our parents sat rigid on the couch, while Vanessa stood by the fireplace, a thick folder in her hands. Her lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit, was laying out documents on the coffee table. "Perfect timing," Vanessa smiled. "We were just discussing the terms of my silence." "Terms?" I moved closer to Mia, who was huddled in the corner armchair. "Well, we can't have Richard finding out about your father's creative accounting, can we? Not when it could ruin so many lives." She pulled out a document. "I've drawn up a new contract. The branch project goes to Ethan, as originally planned. And you, Harper, will make a public statement about stepping down due to personal issues." "You can't do this," Zoe started, but our father cut her off. "Harper, please. Just sign it." I looked around the room, at my father's defeated posture, my mother's tears, Ethan's guilt, and my sister's fear. 6 years away hadn't been enough. I'd come back thinking I could protect them, but I'd only made things worse. "No," I said quietly. Vanessa's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" I said no. I walked to the coffee table and picked up the contract, tearing it in half. "You want to destroy this family? Go ahead. But you'll have to destroy me first." "Harper," my mother sobbed. "I'm done being afraid of you, Vanessa. Send whatever you want to Richard. Release the photos. I don't care anymore." Vanessa's lawyer stepped forward. "Miss Collins, I advise you to reconsider." "Get out," I said, my voice steady. "Both of you."
"And Vanessa?"
"The wedding's off. Tell Richard everything, because if you don't, I will." The silence that followed was broken by Mia standing up. "I'm going with Harper." "Me too," Zoe added. Vanessa's mask cracked completely. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare." I pulled out my phone, dialing Richard's number. "Last chance," I said. "Leave now, or I burn everything down, including your reputation with Daddy." As Vanessa stormed out, I caught Ethan's eye. For the first time, I saw something there besides disappointment, respect. Sometimes protecting your family means being willing to lose them. I looked at my sisters, both standing beside me now, and realized that maybe I hadn't lost anything worth keeping after all. "Pack your bags," I told them. "You're staying with me tonight." The war wasn't over, but at least now we were fighting it on our terms. The Thompson Industries boardroom felt colder than usual as I laid out the evidence, financial records, text messages, recordings. Everything we had on Vanessa, everything about my father's involvement. Richard Thompson sat silently, his expression unreadable as he flipped through the documents. "Why now?" he finally asked. "Because she's not just hurting my family anymore," I said. "She's using her company to do it." Before he could respond, the door burst open. Vanessa strode in, followed by my father and Ethan. The sight of them together made my stomach turn. "Daddy, I can explain everything," Vanessa started, but Richard held up his hand. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes," he said quietly. I suggest everyone take a seat. My father wouldn't look at me as he sat down. Ethan, however, couldn't stop staring, like he was seeing me for the first time. Harper, he whispered, you don't understand what you've done. The board members filed in and Richard stood. Before we begin, I want to address some concerning information that's come to light. Vanessa's hand shot out, gripping my arm. Stop this now, she hissed, or I swear I'll. You'll what? I pulled away. Threaten me again? Release those photos? Go ahead. Richard cleared his throat. The evidence suggests a pattern of financial misconduct involving both Thompson Industries and Collins Enterprises. My father finally looked up, his face ashen. Richard, please. However, Richard continued, what concerns me more is the apparent manipulation and coercion involved. He turned to Vanessa, including by my own daughter. The room went silent. I should have felt triumphant, but something in Richard's tone made my skin crawl. Unfortunately, he said, given the extent of the Collins family's involvement in these irregularities, the board has no choice but to terminate all contracts and pursue legal action.
What?
I stood up. That wasn't the deal. There was no deal, Miss Collins. Richard's voice was ice. You came to me with evidence of criminal activity involving your own family. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? Vanessa started laughing, a horrible, broken sound. Oh, this is perfect. You really thought you were protecting everyone, didn't you, Harper? The noble sister, sacrificing everything to save us all. The police have already been notified, Richard announced. I suggest everyone stay where they are. My father put his head in his hands. Ethan reached for his phone, probably to call our mother. And me? I stood there, watching everything I'd tried to protect crumble. You knew, I said to Vanessa. You knew this would happen. She smiled, tears in her eyes. I learned from the best, didn't I, Daddy? Sometimes you have to destroy something to control it. The sound of sirens grew closer. My phone buzzed, a text from Zoe. Police are at the house. Mom's hysterical. What's happening? The Collins family's assets will be frozen pending investigation, Richard continued, including personal accounts. My head spun. The apartment I'd just rented for my sisters, the new branch I was supposed to run, our parents' house, all gone. I'd walked right into their trap, thinking I could beat them at their own game. Mr. Thompson, I tried one last time. My sisters. Should have been your concern before you brought this to my attention. He cut me off. Vanessa might have her faults, but at least she understands loyalty. The police entered the boardroom, and I watched them approach my father first. Ethan stood between them, trying to explain, but it was useless. As they led our father out, he finally spoke to me. I hope your revenge was worth it, he said softly. Vanessa moved to stand beside her father, their united front a stark contrast to my family's dissolution. You should have just paid the money, Harper. Some families can't be saved. They can only be controlled. As the officers approached me, I realized the true cost of trying to protect everyone. I'd lost not just my family, but everything we'd ever built. And somewhere across town, my sisters were watching our world fall apart, thinking I'd betrayed them all. Sometimes the price of doing the right thing is losing everything you fought to protect. The police station's interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. My lawyer had just left to review new evidence when the door opened and Richard Thompson walked in alone. Interesting development, he said, sliding a USB drive across the table. Someone anonymously sent this to every board member an hour ago. My hands shook as I plugged it into the laptop they'd left me. Video files, dozens of them. Security footage from Thompson Industries, showing Richard and Vanessa in various offices, having conversations they never thought would be recorded. Keep watching, Richard said quietly. The next clip showed Vanessa in Richard's office, screaming about the wedding, about controlling the Collins family, about using my father's desperate financial situation to force the merger. Ethan sent these. I realized. He was the only one with access to your security system. My daughter. Richard's voice cracked. She learned her manipulation from me. I taught her that power was everything, that controlling people was the same as leading them.
The door opened again.
Vanessa stood there, mascara streaking her face. "You betrayed me," she said to her father. "After everything I did to make you proud."
No.
He stood. "I failed you, and now I'm going to fix it." She laughed, that same broken sound from the boardroom. "Fix it? By throwing everything away? I did what you taught me. I found their weakness, I exploited it, You became me," he cut her off. "And that's my greatest shame." My lawyer returned, followed by Ethan and, surprisingly, my father's attorney. "The board has reviewed the new evidence," my lawyer announced. "They're dropping all charges against the Collins family, except for minor financial infractions that can be settled out of court." "What?" I stood up. "But the investigation was based largely on manufactured evidence," Ethan said, not looking at Vanessa. "Evidence that's now been discredited." Vanessa lunged for the laptop, but Richard caught her arm. "Enough. For once in your life, face the consequences of your actions." "Like you did," she spat. "All those years of teaching me how to crush the competition, how to find people's breaking points. Was that all just business, too?" "Yes," he said softly. "And I was wrong." The room fell silent. I watched father and daughter stare at each other, years of toxic lessons and damaged love between them. "The board has called an emergency session," Richard continued. "I'm stepping down as CEO. And Vanessa." He took a deep breath. "You need help. Real help." "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "No one's doing anything to you," I said, standing up. "For once, you're facing exactly what you've earned, just like the rest of us." She turned to Ethan, desperate. Tell them how we were building something together." "How?" "We were building lies," he interrupted. "And I helped you hurt my family because I was too afraid to stand up to you. To either of you." He looked at Richard. My lawyer cleared her throat. "Miss Thompson, given the new evidence, you have some decisions to make. Your father has offered to cover the cost of a treatment program." "Treatment?" She laughed again. "You think this is about me being broken? This is about power. It's always been about power. Harper understands, don't you? Why else would you fight so hard?" I walked to the door, then turned back. "I fought for my family. You fought for control. That's the difference." "The papers are drawn up," Richard said. "Vanessa, please. Let me help you, for once, instead of enabling you." She looked around the room, at her father's pleading face, at Ethan's quiet resolve, at the evidence of her own cruelty playing on the laptop screen. "Fine," she whispered. "You want to see broken? I'll show you broken." But as she reached for the laptop again, her father caught her in his arms, and something finally cracked. She collapsed against him, sobbing like the little girl she must have been once, before power and control became everything. I slipped out of the room, leaving them to their reckoning. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about letting them destroy their own carefully built lies. Ethan followed me out. "Harper, I'm sorry. For everything." "I know," I said. "Let's go home. Our sisters are waiting." 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, watching Mia practice her dance routine while Zoe studied for her college entrance exams. The sound of their laughter still felt like a miracle after everything we'd been through. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Dad's asking if you're coming to dinner tonight." These monthly family dinners had become our way of rebuilding. Small steps, careful conversations, and the slow process of learning to trust again. Our parents were different now, humbled by their mistakes, trying to make amends in their own way. "We should go," Zoe said, looking up from her books. "Mom mentioned she's making your favorite lasagna." "And Vanessa?" Mia asked quietly. I checked my email, finding her latest update from the treatment center. She'd been writing to me, not asking for forgiveness, just sharing her journey of understanding why she'd become who she was. Her last message ended with a question that had kept me awake at night. "How do you fix a family once you've broken it?" "She's still working on herself," I replied. "Just like we all are."
The doorbell rang.
Our father stood there, looking older, but somehow lighter. "I thought I'd drive you all to dinner," he said. "If that's okay." I watched him interact with my sisters, really seeing them this time, not just viewing them through the lens of his ambitions. He'd started attending Mia's dance recitals, helping Zoe research colleges. Small things, but real ones. "Harper," he said as we walked his car, "the new branch numbers came in. You've done an incredible job." "Thanks, Dad." I smiled, remembering how differently those words would have felt 6 months ago. But it's not just me. Ethan's been instrumental in rebuilding our client relationships. My brother had surprised everyone by starting his own consulting firm, refusing Richard Thompson's offer to stay with the company. "Some legacies aren't worth preserving," he'd said. At dinner, our mother had set an extra place at the table, force of habit from when it was supposed to be Vanessa's seat. Now it served as a reminder of how easily a family could lose its way. "I saw Richard at the grocery store," my mother said, passing the salad. "He mentioned Vanessa might come home for Christmas." The table went quiet. Mia reached for my hand under the table. "That's good," I said finally. "Everyone deserves a chance to heal." "Do they?" Zoe asked, her voice sharp. "After everything she did?" I thought about Vanessa's last email, about Richard's face when he realized what his lessons had created, about our own parents learning to value happiness over status. "Sometimes the people who hurt us are the ones who are hurt the worst," I said. "It doesn't excuse what they did, but it helps explain it." "Like Dad's business decisions?" Mia asked quietly. Our father set down his fork. "Like a lot of things I did thinking I was protecting this family. I was wrong, and I'm trying to make it right." Later that night, back at our apartment, I found a letter in my bag, Vanessa's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a check for the exact amount she'd tried to extort from me, along with a note. Not as redemption, but as a reminder that some debts can never really be repaid. Use it for your sister's future. I tore up the check and wrote back a single line. "Some debts aren't about money." Zoe appeared in my doorway. "You okay?" "Yeah," I smiled. Just thinking about how sometimes protecting your family means knowing when to fight and when to forgive. "And which is this?" she asked. I looked at my sisters, strong, resilient, free from the shadows that had nearly broken us, and realized that maybe the answer wasn't about fighting or forgiving at all. Maybe it was about building something new from the pieces of what was broken. "This," I said, "is about choosing who we want to be, not who we're afraid of becoming." Mia turned up her dance music, pulling us both up to join her. As we danced in our small living room, I thought about family, not the one we'd lost, but the one we'd chosen to build together. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free.